Kim Woojing was in his first year at Junseo High School, and there he was one of the most respected students, as he was the strongest guy in the entire high school. One day, Kim was walking with his friends, and he decided to show them his strength by hitting a special machine with all his might, on which Kim was able to reach 998 points. Kim's friends were shocked that Kim was able to break the record so easily and achieve almost the maximum number of points per stroke. After testing his strength, Kim invited his friends to walk a little more, but they said that it was time for them to go home, since they all had to go to school tomorrow. As soon as Kim and her friends were getting ready to go home, they noticed how one girl also decided to hit the machine gun. This girl turned out to be so strong that when she hit the machine gun, it simply broke. Kim and her friends could not believe that this simple-looking girl could break this machine gun with one blow. This incident with the machine gun radically changed Kim's opinion that he was the strongest person in the entire school. For the most part, Kim didn't care how much stronger his opponent might be, since he absolutely always won. After some time, Kim began to think that there was simply no one left at school with whom he could match his strength. One day, Kim saw girls perform tricks with bending a spoon. Seoyoung, who broke the machine, also wanted to show how to bend spoons, and after a couple of seconds she showed everyone the spoon twisted into a ball. Kim could not even imagine that in all this time he could have missed such a strong opponent, and he wanted to fight Lee at any cost. However, Kim could not even imagine how it would be better for him to challenge her to a fight. Even though Lee was a girl, Kim was surprised at how she could have such great power. Kim believed that Lee was the strongest person not only in the school, but in the entire area. While Kim was thinking about how he could better challenge Lee, he heard from his classmates that today's gym class would be with the girls and they would be playing dodgeball during the class. Kim thought this would be a great opportunity to beat Lee in class since he was the best dodgeball player. An hour later, a physical education lesson began, in which the students began to divide into teams before playing dodgeball. When the teams were assembled, the teacher sat down on the bench and started playing on the phone, while the students had already started playing. The boys' team threw the ball first, telling the girls' team that they had no intention of giving in and were going to overpower the girls. After that, from the side of the girls, a ball flew into the face of one of the boys with lightning speed, after which this boy sat on the bench of the retired players. Then Kim swung with all his might and threw the ball towards Lee, hoping that he would be able to hit. However, contrary to Kim's expectations, Lee manages to duck to the ground and dodge Kim's throw. During the game, Kim and Lee tried to hit each other throughout the game, thereby accidentally hitting other players. After some time, almost all the players were sitting on the bench of the eliminated players. Meanwhile, Kim and Lee were the only players left on the field. Kim noticed that Lee was already completely exhausted, and he decided to take advantage of this moment and throw the ball at her with all his strength. For the first time in the entire game, Kim manages to hit Lee with the ball, who began to fall to the ground. Kim was incredibly happy that he was able to prove that he was much stronger than Lee. However, instead of falling to the ground, Lee grabbed the ball with both hands, tensed her legs, and was able to stay on the ground after throwing such a force. Kim couldn't believe what was happening, seeing in front of him how Lee was able to resist his throw. At that moment, the bell rang and Kim didn't want his battle with Kim to end so suddenly. Several more lessons passed, and towards evening the lessons ended and the students began to get ready to go home. Kim was not happy with the fact that his battle with Lee today ended in a draw, and he promised himself that next time he would definitely defeat her. At one point, Lee knocked Kim out of his thoughts and suggested that he go home together, since they still live in the same apartment, and she needed to have a serious conversation with him. Kim believed that Lee wanted to fight him again and that this would be a good opportunity to defeat her and become the strongest student in the school again. As a result, Kim agrees to Lee's request to go home together, and for the first half of the road they simply walked in silence. At one point, Kim finally decides to ask Lee what she wanted to talk to him about. Then Lee stopped and asked Kim directly if he liked her. Kim was shocked by what he heard, because he did not understand why Lee suddenly made such a conclusion. Lee said she's noticed Kim staring at her more and more lately, and after the dodgeball incident, her doubts about it only grew stronger. Kim wanted to try to justify all his actions towards Lee, but he couldn't tell her that he wanted to fight her. Then Lee herself suggested that Kim was doing all this just to fight with her. Lee also added that even if he wants to fight with her, he must understand that it is disgusting if he wants to fight with a girl who is much smaller than him, which made Kim feel very ashamed. At that moment, a huge and pumped-up man appeared behind Kim, and when Lee saw him, she said that it was her father who had come. When Kim turned around, he saw in front of him two huge pumped-up men, who were many times larger than himself. Out of fear, Kim stood in a stupor, after which he remembered that he had not said hello, and immediately bowed down in front of the man. After that, the beefy man asked what this guy was doing next to his sister. After that, Kim greeted an even larger and beefier man, who turned out to be Lee's father. Then two pumped-up men surrounded Kim, and asked if he was friends with Lee. Kim could only look at Lee and not understand that she had such a strange family. Father Lee asked Kim why he wears his hair that color when school rules require students to wear their natural hair color. Kim just looked at Lee's father, and told him that it was his personal business what hair color he should wear. Then Brother Lee became very angry and was going to hurt Kim for his disrespectful address to his father. Lee told her brother Hanbil that she repeatedly told him that he should wear a school uniform since no one sees him as a high school student. Hanbil said that even though he is only 14 years old, no one will believe that he is a school but even if he wears a school uniform. Lee's father was very interested in the fact that Kim spoke so boldly to him and his son without any fear, while any other person would faint just by looking at them. Then Father Lee told Kim that despite the fact that Kim was several times smaller than him, he had very great willpower. Lee told her father that Kim was currently one of the leaders at the school. Hearing this, Hanbil and his father laughed loudly at the statement. Lee then told her father and brother that this was the truth, even though he dyed his hair, dressed like a bully and had a very skinny build. Lee added that even with all these qualities of Kim, she still felt sorry for them to laugh at him so openly. While Hanbil and his father continued to laugh loudly at Kim, he began to cry and ran away, shouting to Lee that she was the worst in this situation. After this incident, Lee and his brother and father returned home hungry. Lee's equally pumped-up mother met her with her father and brother, and said that they would have curry for dinner today. When everyone changed clothes and took a shower, the whole family sat down at the table and began to have dinner. While eating, Lee noticed that the food only contained chicken, vegetables and tofu, and that there was no rice at all. In response, the father said that there should be no carbohydrates in their food. While Father Lee was eating his food, he looked at his daughter and noticed that her arms were too thin. Then Hanbil also said that his sister was only skin and bones, to which his mother replied that Lee should have slightly thin arms since she is a girl. After that, Lee's father asked his daughter what her relationship was with the guy they met today. Lee noticed that her father and brother began to laugh again, and she said that he really was the leader of the school. Meanwhile, Kim's older sister wanted to call him to come down to the kitchen and have dinner together. However, when Kim's older sister opened the door to his room, she saw him lying on his bed and crying. Kim's older sister wanted to know why her brother was crying now, because before he didn't cry even in such situations when he was losing some kind of fight, and she thought that it was all because of some girl. Assuming that it was really the girl, Kim's older sister told him that she understood what Kim was going through now, since when she was 17 years old, she also experienced her first failed relationship. Kim raised his head and shouted to his sister to leave his room and sit down to dinner without him. Meanwhile, Lee's father still wanted to know what his daughter's relationship was with that guy, to which she said that they were just studying in the same class. The father said that for the first time he saw his daughter returning home with a guy, from which he concluded that they were in love. Lee denied her father's theory, and said there was nothing like that between them. Then Hanbil invited her to play and asked her who she would save if they were in the water, him or Kim. Then Lee imagined a situation in which her brother and Kim found themselves in the water. Lee knew that if this happened, then her brother would not have any difficulties in such a situation. Lee also believed that if her brother were in such a situation with Kim, then Hanbil would try to get rid of Kim at the first opportunity. Without thinking twice, Lee said that the first thing she would do would be to save Kim Woojung. Hearing this, Hanbil began to tease his sister, telling her that she had fallen in love with this guy. However, Lee's father told his son that if he were in her place, he would also save Kim, after which he told his son to stop talking nonsense and calm down. Meanwhile, Kim went outside after lunch to take out the trash from the house. While Kim was walking down the street, he was thinking about how he could deal with Lee so that rumors would definitely spread about it. At first, Kim thought that it would be enough to tell her about the proposal to hold a fight, but he abruptly changed his mind, considering that this was a bad idea. While Kim was walking down the street, he saw how some thug began to pester one girl. The girl tried to explain as clearly as possible to the drunken and angry thug that they could not be together. The girl said that she was extremely ashamed of the behavior of this thug, who was not the first time offering this girl to meet. Then the girl repeated once again that she would not meet with him under any circumstances, which only angered the thug more. The thug was even more annoyed by the fact that throughout the conversation the girl looked at him as if he were some kind of disgusting. The thug's patience has been completely exhausted, and he decides to use force, since he failed to convince her with words. A moment before the blow, Kim manages to intervene and hit the drunken thug in the face with all his might. This girl and a couple of other girls were surprised at how such a frail guy at first glance not only was not afraid of this thug, but also successfully neutralized him. During the impact, Kim didn't hesitate to call the goon a scumbag for such inappropriate behavior. Kim's blow was so strong that this thug lost consciousness and lay on the ground with a bloody face. However, this blow did not cause Kim any of the positive emotions that he gets in a fight, since the only opponent who could arouse his interest was still Lee. The girl chuckled quietly and said that Kim had once again helped her, and that he still had the same fighting character. Kim turned to face the girl, looked closely at her, and did not understand who she was. Then Kim tried to remember this girl, replaying a bunch of different memories from his life in his head. However, Kim was never able to remember who this girl was and how she knew him. The girl interrupted Kim's thoughts and told him that he had grown a lot since their last meeting, because when they were in elementary school they were about the same height, to which Kim replied that she had also changed a lot, pretending that he recognized her. Taking a closer look at the girl, Kim noticed that she was wearing a sports uniform from the Junseo school, after which he told her that he was also studying there in the 3rd grade and that she could visit him, after which he said that it was time for him to go to one important case. The girl stopped Kim and told him that usually no one goes to important business dressed like this, to which he replied that no one would care what clothes he wears. Then the girl said that if no one cares about his appearance, then this is not such an important meeting. After that, the girl extended her hand to Kim in honor of the first such meeting in so many years. In response, Kim extended his hand and shook the girl's hand, which made them both equally pleased to see each other. The next day, rumors spread throughout the school that Kim had defeated one of the 3rd-year high school students the previous night. Everyone was surprised that in such a short time in high school, Kim had already killed so many people. During one of the breaks, Kim's classmates were surprised by an unexpected visit from one of the school's students. This student turned out to be the same girl whom Kim had helped on the street last night, and she wanted to visit him. The guys knew this girl as Oh Siho, who was the queen of Gangso High School, after which one of the guys pointed her to the place where Kim usually sat. Siho walked up to Kim and handed him his favorite chocolate milk as a token of gratitude for helping her yesterday. Kim took the milk and said that he did it because he was disgusted by the behavior of this guy. Siho asked Kim what he was doing just now, to which he replied that he was just thinking a little. While Kim drank his milk, he looked at Lee and already imagined in his head how he would fight with her. Siho also began to stare at Lee and think that Kim had fallen in love with Lee. At that moment, Lee felt as many as 2 people were already looking at her intently, which only frightened her more. Lee became so nervous about this that she accidentally broke her pen while writing in her notebook. Back in elementary school, Kim became Siho's first real friend. Kim and Siho were such good friends that when they were kids, they developed a special friendly handshake that they always used to greet each other. Many years had passed since that moment, and despite this, Siho still remembered every movement of that handshake. However, Siho was offended that she and Kim stopped communicating with each other so quickly. After class, Siho watched Kim and Lee doing pull-ups together on the horizontal bars. During the exercises, Lee began to imitate Kim for sweating so quickly during pull-ups on the horizontal bar. Kim told Lee that he sweats like that all the time, even when he's not doing weight training, but Lee didn't believe him at all. Then Kim rose above the horizontal bar and asked Lee if she could do the same. Lee was shocked by what she saw, as she had never done this before. Kim only teased Lee more, telling her that even a strong woman like her couldn't do something like that. Lee was so annoyed by Kim's behavior that, out of anger, she simply squeezed the bar in the places where she was holding onto it. Siho just looked at everything that was happening with Kim and Lee and didn't understand how a guy like Kim could like a girl like Lee. The longer Siho looked at Kim and Lee, the more angry she became at what she saw in front of her. Towards evening, Siho went to one of the stores to buy a can of soda. But when Siho was about to take the last can of soda, Lee was next to her, who also wanted to buy herself a soda. The girls recognized each other, and it was clear from their gaze that they were not at all happy about such a meeting. Seho immediately pretended that she was happy to see Lee and said that she often sees her together with Kim. Seho then told Lee that she was willing to give up the last can of soda to Lee if she wanted it so much. Seho's behavior, but she did not argue with her and took the last can of soda. A couple of minutes later, Lee was standing outside the store, drinking her favorite soda, while Seho was slowly sipping a carton of juice. After a minute, Seho finished her juice and asked Lee if she was dating Kim. Lee almost choked when she heard this question and replied that she and Kim had no relationship. Lee also added that she wouldn't date some guy who dyes his hair blonde and tries to act like he's the coolest guy in the whole world. Seho was surprised that despite Lee spending so much time with Kim, she spoke so poorly about him. Dong Sok appeared in front of the girls, the same guy from whom Kim recently protected Seho on the street. He was incredibly angry when Lee mentioned Kim, and he wanted to know where Kim was now. Lee was so frightened that out of fear she accidentally squeezed the can of soda in her hand. Dong Sik got angry at Lee's sudden yelling and told her to shut up, which she did. Seho didn't understand why this guy started appearing next to her so often, and it was starting to piss her off very much. Having looked a little closer, Seho and this guy is the same thug who pestered her last night. Seho asked Dong Sik why he came here, to which he replied that he wanted to take revenge on Kim for breaking his nose yesterday. Then Dong Sik rudely asked Seho where Kim was now, to which she replied that she did not know where Kim was now, and even if she knew, she would never have told him. Then Dong Sok began to threaten Seho with terrible reprisals if she didn't call Kim here right away. Despite such loud and severe threats, Seho completely refused to invite Kim here, which only angered Dong Sik more. At that moment, Lee interrupted Seho's conversation with Dong Sik and began jumping between them, thereby trying to attract attention to herself. Seho was a little surprised by such courage and did not understand what she needed to do in such a situation. Lee, like a little girl, apologized for interfering and politely asked Dong Sik and Seho to stop arguing with each other. Lee said that she knows how irritable Kim can be, but despite all this situation has nothing to do with him, and she suggests that Dong Sik look for him at school tomorrow. However, Dong Sik didn't listen to Lee any further, and he simply grabbed her head. An enraged Dong Sik began shaking Lee and shouting at her that he had to deal with Kim right now. Lee asked Dong Sik to let her go, but he only started shaking her harder. After a few seconds, Dong Sik got tired of holding Lee's head and shaking it, so he let go and hit her on the cheek. After that, Dong Sik grabbed Lee by the hair and told Seho to call Kim here right now if she doesn't want to see him kill Lee. Then Lee began to laugh softly, which made Dong Sik begin to pull her hair even harder. Dong Sik in the stomach with her elbow with all her might, and he let go of her in pain. Lee's blow was so strong that Dong Sik fell to his knees and began screaming in pain. Seho was shocked that Lee was able to neutralize such a big guy like Dong Sik so easily. 10 years ago, Father Lee said that there are many different dangerous things and situations in this world, from harassment to demon attacks. Even though Lee's father is always ready to protect Lee and her little brother, he still has to prepare them for anything so that even alone they can cope with any danger. Hanbyo various attack and self-defense techniques for several years. Dong Sik was about to hit Lee as hard as possible, but she easily dodged his attack. No matter how quickly or aggressively Dong Sik tried to inflict any damage on Lee, she managed to dodge each of his attacks without any problems. Seho just watched Lee and Dong Sik's battles from the sidelines and never ceased to be amazed at how skillfully Lee managed to dodge Dong Sik's blows. A few seconds later, Lee still hit Dong Sik in the face, thereby managing to stop and neutralize him. Dong Sik in the head as hard as possible in order to knock him down as quickly and effectively as possible. The last thing Dong Suk saw when he found himself on the ground was Lee's fist, from the blow of which he immediately lost consciousness. After this, several people appeared at the scene of the fight, and wanted to know what happened here. At that moment, Lee grabbed Seho's hand and they began to run away, as Lee was afraid that passers-by would recognize them by their school uniforms and report what had happened to the school. A couple of minutes later, Lee and Seho left the scene of the fight so quickly that Seho's breathing increased greatly. After a few seconds, Seho caught her breath and asked Lee why she helped her. Seho told Lee that even when she was slapped, she did not run away, but fought back against Dong Sik, without fear that sooner or later even those who might be much stronger than Dong Sik might attack her. Lee recalled a moment from her childhood when, after a long and hard training in self-defense, she wanted to quit and not practice anymore. Then Lee's father turned his daughter's attention to Hanbyul, who, despite his lack of strength, still continued to try his best. Lee's father then told her that if she continued to train as hard as her younger brother, she would be able to protect not only herself, but anyone else around her. Then Lee told Siho that she just helped her in such a difficult situation, and she is not at all afraid if some stronger guys come after her, since she can defeat them as easily as Sunbae. Siho looked at Lee and thought that she was really cool, and she understood why she attracted Kim's attention so much. But even despite this, Siho still considered Lee to be very cool and her number one enemy, against whom she would fight for Kim's attention. After the fight, Dong-suk came to his senses and went up to the roof of one of the buildings with his friend Yang Soo-hyun to smoke and recover. At this time, Yang was taunting Dong-sik because he was first beaten by a first-year high school student, and now he was beaten by a girl. In his defense, Dong-sik told Yang that all this talk about being beaten by a girl was nothing more than a rumor. Then Yang asked Dong-sik if it was true that he was beaten by Kim Woo-jun, who was not afraid to get into a fight with anyone. Dong-sik was very annoyed that his friend decided to mock him at a difficult moment. However, Yang also added that since Kim Woo-jun entered high school, the situation has become more hectic, as this guy had already gotten into fights with some of Yang's friends from other schools. This situation made Yang so angry that he could not concentrate on his studies, and he promised to take revenge on Kim for everything he had done. The next morning, Kim went to school and was met on the way by his friend Young Soo-hyun. Chan said that he was aware of what was going on between Kim and Lee, but Kim himself did not understand what Soo-hyun was talking about. Young then said that he knows that Kim has a crush on Lee So-hyun from his class. Jong said that Kim was looking at Lee too much and that he was too obvious about his interest in her. Jong also said that Kim had repeatedly shown his feelings for Lee through provocative actions. Kim told his friend that it was none of his business, from which Chan concluded that Kim really liked Lee. Kim then said that what he really liked about Lee was that her strength was many times greater than his. Kim also said that he would love to fight Lee, but he would never fight a girl in his life. Kim added that he only compares his strength to Lee's through various low-impact competitions. Chan listened to what Kim was saying and realized that his friend was just an idiot. Meanwhile, Lee and his friend So-hee were discussing what menu would be in the school cafeteria today, and after learning today's menu, they both decide to go to the cafeteria. Once at the buffet, Lee and So-hee were horrified by the fact that there were so many people in the buffet, which made them think that they wouldn't eat today. Dong-suk emerged from the crowd with a chocolate bun and a packet of popcorn, glad that he had so easily managed to grab some food from the buffet. Lee noticed Dong-sik among the crowd, walked up to him and politely asked him to share some food. Dong-sik was afraid that Lee was going to beat him again, and out of fear, he fell to the floor, wet his pants, and gave Lee and So-hee all his food, despite the fact that Lee asked him to share a little of his food as politely as possible. After that, Lee and So-hee ate half a bun each, which didn't make their hunger go away, and So-hee asked Lee what connected her with that guy in the buffet. When the still hungry Lee and So-hee entered the office, they saw Kim sitting in front of them with his legs thrown up on the desk. Kim just had one whole bun, with which he teased the already hungry Lee a little. Lee said that she was very hungry, and Kim told her that he would give her the bun if she fought him and beat him. Lee had no choice, and she was ready for any battle just to satisfy her hunger. However, Kim said that he was not going to fight her, and that he had already thought of what they would compete in. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Yang wanted to find Kim and deal with him as soon as possible, but he couldn't find him. Then Yang asked the girls passing by in which office Kim Woo-jun studied. When Ian found the office he needed and entered it, something small immediately flew towards him. Ian managed to react and catch the object flying at him, and it turned out to be an ordinary table tennis ball. After that, Yang took a closer look at the guy who asked him to return the ball, and he recognized him as the same Kim Woo-jun that Dong-sik told him about. However, Yang still did not understand what Kim and Lee were doing now. Then Kim replied that he and Lee were currently having a table tennis shoe battle. When Kim again asked Ian to return the ball to them, Ian simply took it and squeezed it. Then Yang made the most serious expression on his face, and said that he came here to talk to Kim. But Kim did not take Yang seriously, and took out another tennis ball from his pocket, which he secretly stole from the gym teacher. Ian was very angry at how Kim blatantly ignored his instructions. Then, out of anger, Yang kicked the desks on which Kim and Lee were playing with all his might to the side. After that, Yang took the ball from Kim, threw it out the window and once again asked Kim to come out and talk to him. Then Kim pulled out another ball from his pocket, after which Yang hit Kim in the face. At that moment, Lee took out the bag of popcorn that Dong-sik gave her and looked at everything that was happening in front of her. Yang told Kim that he had crossed the threshold to which Yang could continue to tolerate his behavior. However, Kim only laughed at Yang and told him that his punch was nothing special. At that moment, she watched with all interest and attention what was happening now, while some other students tried to take the popcorn from her. Kim invited Yang to fight him here and now, since he was annoying him so much, which only made Yang angrier. The day before, Yang and Dong-sik discussed how Yang was going to deal with Kim. Yang believed that Kim only fights strong guys, and therefore he is unlikely to refuse to fight him. Yang said that he will find Kim and challenge him to a fight tomorrow at school since he has practice exams today. After that, Yen stood up and was about to leave, finally saying that tomorrow he and all his intelligentsia would resolve the issue with him as quietly as possible. Dong-sik looked at everything that was happening between Kim and Yang and was extremely surprised. Dong-sik looked at this and did not understand how Yang himself was making so much noise, while the students looked at Dong-sik and laughed at his appearance. Yang grinned at the fact that the first-year high school student not only wasn't afraid, but even offered to fight him. After this, Yang ordered Kim to come to the wasteland after classes, where their battle would take place. After class, Kim went to the wasteland to fight Yang. However, Kim's way was blocked by Chan, who said that all the students were already talking about their fight today. Chan advised Kim to apologize to Yang and avoid a fight, but Kim no longer listened to him. Leaving the school, Lee and So-hee heard Young telling Kim who Yang really was. Chan told Kim that the most dangerous guys used to study at Junseo High School, and 2 years ago, Yang became the one who dared to fight back all the bullies in the school, after which, Chan also added that it would be better for Kim to retreat, since Yang was able to clear the school of hooligans without any problems and restore order in it. However, Chan's words not only did not convince Kim to give up the fight, but also made him more inclined to fight with Yang. Lee and So-hee started laughing loudly at what they had just heard from Kim. Then Kim noticed Lee and So-hee laughing at him, and invited them to go with him and watch him defeat Yang. Towards evening, Kim came to the vacant lot, where Ian and several other guys were already waiting for him. Kim noticed that besides Yang, several other people came here, and he thought that Yang wanted to outnumber Kim, to which Yang replied that all these people came here as spectators. Having looked closely at several guys, Kim believed that he had already seen these faces somewhere. And then Kim recognized these people as several hooligans he used to know, and he was shocked by what Yang did to them. Yang told Kim that he arrived 3 minutes later than the meeting time he had indicated, for which Yang already wanted to deal with Kim as quickly as possible, since high school graduates always had very little time. Kim asked Yang what he had done with these people, to which Yang replied that he had set them on the right path. Yang also added that after he defeats Kim in battle, he will also guide him on the right path and make him a decent student. Kim immediately interrupted Ian and told him that it was time for them to start fighting, since he himself was worried about his time. Then Yang stood up, took off his glasses and prepared for the battle ahead of him and Kim. Within seconds, Yang and Kim were engaged in a fierce battle against each other. One of the spectators watched the battle and thought that despite the fact that Kim fights decently, he will still become as decent a student as they are. Another viewer said that Kim has a fierce and stern look, and that Kim will lose the battle against Yang today. A third viewer said that she did see Kim as a worthy opponent for Yang, but she also believed that despite his best efforts, there was no way Kim could defeat Yang. At one point in the battle, Kim finally managed to inflict significant damage on Yang's arm. Despite the severe pain, Yang did not give up and tried to continue the battle in this state. Then the audience immediately began to support Kim and ask him to defeat Yang and rid the school of his dictatorial system. In response to this reaction, Yang said that he remembered the faces of everyone who just said this. Then all the spectators fell silent, put on a decent appearance, and continued to silently watch the fight. The moment Kim asked Lee to come with him and watch his fight with Yang, she knew that it would be an interesting spectacle in which the head of the first class fought against the head of the third class. However, Lee had repeatedly heard from other students how skillfully Kim fought, but she had never seen how Kim fought against such serious opponents as Yang. However, in Lee Yang's eyes, she also did not look like some kind of strong and difficult opponent, and so she was doubly curious as to why they were both considered the main ones in the school. So he asked Lee if she would go to watch Kim and Yang fight. to which Lee replied that they were both going to watch their fight. Soo-hee told Lee that she would love to go with her, but she was a little scared. Lee said that it is normal for a person to exhibit deviant behavior in such situations, which confused Soo-hee a little. Then Lee began to persuade Soo-hee to go along, and Seho said that she would also go with them. Seho's sudden appearance, and she said that she had just left school and was also going to go watch Kim and Yang fight, and she began to ask to go with them. Lee and Soo-hee thought that Seho really likes to watch other people fight, but Seho said that she doesn't like it at all when someone fights, and she said with an embarrassed face that she just wanted to watch the fight. Yang looked at Kim and thought that he was much stronger than he expected. Kim also looked at Ian and hoped that he could easily defeat him if he fought with half his strength, but apparently he would have to give his all for an unconditional victory. Then Kim invited Yang to bet that if Yang wins, then Kim will become the same as those spectators whom Yang corrected. But if Kim wins, then Yang will have to come to school in a female school uniform. Yang looked at Kim and thought that he had met himself from the past, after which he accepted such conditions. Kim attacked Yang with the words that for Yang he perceived his punishment as a reward, since he agreed so easily. However, Yang said that he doesn't care at all, and the main thing for him is simply not to lose in this battle. After this, Yang tried to hit Kim with his knee in order to neutralize him as effectively as possible. A few hits later, Kim and Yang stood up again and started talking to each other. Suddenly Yang told Kim that he reminded him very much of him in his youth, and therefore he wanted to guide Kim on the right path even more, but Kim did not understand what Yang was telling him. Ian said that a few years ago he also drank a lot, smoked, fought with other guys, rode around the city on a motorcycle, and he absolutely did not care about anything else. However, one day Ian felt that his lifestyle was making him more and more disgusted with himself every day, and it was then that he realized that it was time for him to change and become more mature. That day, Ian was drinking with his friends on the playground as usual, and his friends began to notice that Ian was becoming something different. One of Ian's friends said that today he almost got into a fight with his younger brother, who was in junior school. This friend said that last night his younger brother asked him to help with his homework, and since everything was easy, he quickly helped him, and the next day the younger brother came home and told him that all his answers were wrong, after which he called him a fool. Then Ian became interested in what problems he had solved, and after looking at the really easy problems, he told his friend that his brother was right, and that he really was a rare idiot. Ian said that in fact all the answers here were wrong, and the friends began to argue with Ian. Ian said that the answer to one of the examples would be 6, to which his friends replied that the correct answer would be 8. Then the friends decided that they should teach Ian a lesson not to stand out when he makes such erroneous conclusions, and then Ian's friends threw a live frog into his beer mug, after which they forced him to completely drink the entire contents of his mug. It was at this moment that Ian realized that if he continued to behave this way, his life would not get better, and then he completely abandoned all his bad habits of the past and his undeveloped social circle. Kim listened to Ian carefully and thought only about what the beer tasted like with a live frog swimming in it. Then Yang told Kim that if he didn't put in his efforts, he wouldn't achieve anything in life, and that Kim had every chance to improve in his first year of study. But Kim was already tired of all this chatter, and he couldn't wait to continue their fight. Yan immediately realized that Kim was unlikely to want to immediately realize everything that he had just told him. Then Yang decided to stop talking and give Kim a couple of serious blows. However, Kim not only managed to dodge Ian's blows, but at the same time deal him a heavy blow to the stomach, from which Ian immediately fell to the ground. Next, Kim was going to trample the prone Ian on the spot, but he manages to dodge such an attack in time. Kim said he realized that Yan had pulled himself together and changed his lifestyle, after which he asked Yan why he didn't just change schools and study there. Yan said that he initially thought about changing schools, but then he thought that he didn't need it when he could fit Junseo into his lifestyle. Yan added that he wanted more to create his own learning atmosphere at school by dealing with all the bullies in the school. Yan also wanted to give all these bullies a second chance to get on the right path with him, as a result of which he beat the crap out of them that was in their heads and forced them to study well enough that each of them could after school to get to university. Meanwhile, Lee tried to see how the fight between Kim and Yang was going. When Seho and Soo-hee wanted to ask Lee what was going on, Lee said that Kim nearly overpowered Yang. Lee, Seho and Soo-hee were unable to enter the wasteland area due to the fact that at all possible passage points there were Yang's reformed bullies, through whom they could not pass. So he said that she and Siho couldn't hang on the wall like Lee, and Siho added that if there was any hole or crack in the wall, they could look at the Adraka. Then Lee came down from the wall and said that she could make a hole in the wall for them. Siho asked Lee how she planned to make a hole in the wall, to which she replied that she would simply break through the wall, which scared Sohee very much, since they could be caught right away. Then Lee prepared to hit the wall, and in less than a second a large hole appeared in the wall. Kim kept hearing from Ian how he gave all these bullies a second chance, and how this educational gesture changed the lives of each bully for the better. Then, in confirmation of Ian's words, the reformed hooligans said that their parents were actually pleased with such changes. To refute Yang's words, Kim told him that Dong-sik recently slapped one of the first-grade students. Yang could not believe what he heard, from which Kim concluded that Yang did not know about this incident. Then Kim decided not to stop, and decided to tell him another incident that happened to him a few days ago. One day, Kim was walking down the hallway and accidentally bumped shoulders with Choi Kyusop-seo, who was in his second year of study. Then, a couple of seconds later, Kyusop-seo hit him in the face with all his might without warning, causing Kim to fall to the floor. Kim understood perfectly well that time Kyusop-seo deliberately ran into conflict and provoked another fight. Then Kim suggested that Yang also did not know about this incident, because if he had known about this situation, he would have immediately started re-educating him. And there were many more such hooligans at Junso's school. Kim told Yang that the two were the type of bullies who pretend to be weak in front of people like Yang and act very differently in front of weak students who are unable to fight back. And Yang doesn't see in them the anger they hold back just in front of him. However, despite Yang's best efforts to re-educate such students, they were still bullies in front of other students. Then Kim wondered whether Yang could allow Yang to not know about such hooligans, since rumors about them were heard from everywhere, or whether he knew about everything and decided to simply allow such behavior from hooligans. However, in any case, Kim found it disgusting that Yang pretended that he was ready to do anything to ensure that the discipline of Junseo's school flourished. At that moment, all those reformed hooligans who were watching the fight suddenly felt ashamed that they had actually behaved like that at school. Kim called Yang a hypocrite and an idiot for only getting rid of bullies who only bother him and for only justifying his behavior as noble deeds. At first, Yang wanted to attack Kim again, but at that moment he was distracted by a loud sound from one of the walls of the wasteland. The reason for this loud sound was that Lee still managed to create a small hole in the wall through which she, Siho, and Sohee could watch the fight. Ian looked away from the conversation and was shocked that some girl could break through a concrete wall so easily. Kim decided to take advantage of his opponent's inattention and hit Yang in the face as hard as possible. During the strike, Kim did not forget to humiliate Ian in every possible way, calling him trash and an idiot. After a few seconds, Yang concentrated on the fight and continued to flinch from Kim's attacks and try to injure him. Meanwhile, the girls watched the fight and were surprised at what kind of punches Kim and Yang were trying to land on each other. Lee drew attention to the fact that Kim is now in a serious condition, and that he is trying to fight back Yang, from which she deduced that Kim was a common masochist. While Kim and Yang were hitting each other, Lee yelled at Kim that he fully lived up to her expectations, that he was a bad fight, after which she called him a yellow-haired anchovy. Yang then stopped hitting Kim again and started making fun of Lee for calling Kim a yellow-haired anchovy. Then Kim decides to take advantage of the right moment again and attack his opponent as soon as possible, but this time Yang manages to block such a powerful blow. Despite his timely defense, Jan still had difficulty standing on his feet after such a move. Then Kim is about to attack Ian as quickly as possible with a high kick to Ian's face, but Ian manages to trip Kim, from which Kim immediately falls to the ground. After Kim fell to the ground, Yang was going to punch Yang in the face as quickly and as hard as possible before Kim could get to his feet. But despite his not very fortunate position, Kim was not at a loss, and when Yang's face was close enough, he kicked him on the head with all his might, even though Yang also managed to punch him in the face. Lee watched the fight with all her interest and thought that she also wanted to join their fight. After such simultaneous blows, both fighters lay on the ground covered in bruises and wounds. However, after just a couple of seconds, Kim held Ian by the hair and mercilessly hit him in the face. Yang wasn't going to let him lose and come to school tomorrow in a girl's uniform. Then Yang also grabbed Kim by the hair and began punching him in the face with all his might. After a few seconds, Kim and Ian were exhausted and they stopped punching each other in the faces. Despite his lack of strength, Kim was not going to stop, and he wanted to continue beating Ian. But suddenly he felt someone grab his clothes. When Kim turned around, he saw the face of Young Sihyun, who wanted to stop this fight. Chan raised Kim to his feet and told him that he should not have agreed to the fight, to which Kim himself, with all his tenacity, said that even so he was able to defeat him. The girls were surprised how Chan so easily came to the wasteland in order to take the exhausted Kim home to his sister. When Young carried his friend's body out of the wasteland, he noticed the girls and told them that they should go home right now, as this place might be too dangerous for them. Then Lee wanted to know what Chan's condition was now, to which Chan replied that Kim would be fine. Siho approached Young and asked him why he came here, to which Young replied that he was here to pick up Kim before he got more bruises again. From Chan's words, Lee assumed that this was not the first time Kim had fought, and Chan told her that back in middle school, Kim had repeatedly participated in similar fights, and each time Chan looked after Kim. At the time, Lee didn't understand whether Chan was too kind or just a simpleton, to which Chan said that he was just doing what any friend would do in his place. Lee looked at Chan and thought that Kim was surrounded by very good people. The next day, Kim came to school with a bunch of bruises, wounds and bandages, and he told his friends in great detail how his fight with Yang yesterday went, saying about him that it was one of his easiest and most boring fights. Kim also said that since Yang was defeated in yesterday's fight, today he would have to come in a female school uniform, and Kim sat near the window and waited for Yang to come to school. On this day, one of the teachers stood near the entrance through which he let students into the school. The teacher was shocked when he saw Yang approaching the school in a girl's school uniform. The teacher was furious, and he couldn't find the words to describe how furious he was with Ian for coming to school in a girl's uniform. Then Ian also started shouting at the teacher, telling him that he himself was not happy that he had come in a woman's uniform today. At that moment, the director appeared in front of Yang and the teacher, who said that there was nothing wrong with the fact that Yang came today in a female form. All the students went to the window and were surprised that Yang actually came to school in a female uniform. After this, Kim told Lee that he also wants to fight her soon. However, Lee interrupted Kim and said that her father told her not to communicate with him anymore, and this news greatly surprised Kim. Last night, Lee, Siho and Sohee were happily discussing the fight between Kim and Yang. At one point, Siho said that it was already late, and that her father would be angry with her for staying out so late. Then Sohee also remembered that today she did not warn her mother that she would come home later today, after which Siho and Sohee asked Lee if everything would be fine with her when she came home. However, Lee no longer listened to the girls, and she was terrified of what would happen to her when she returned home. Then Lee decided to return home as soon as possible so as not to receive any severe punishment from her parents. However, Lee believed that her parents would definitely pay attention to the fact that she came home so late, and she decided to get home through the window, climbing up the wall of the house several floors. When Lee got home, she thought about how she could best behave so that her parents would believe that she had long since come home. However, Lee noticed that when she successfully got home, her younger brother was standing in front of her. Lee asked Hanbyul if her parents were home, and when Hanbyul replied that her parents were home, she asked her younger brother to help her pretend that she had been home for a long time. Lee didn't even have time to finish speaking when Hanbyul immediately started calling for his father, and Lee had no choice but to hit his brother in the face. A few minutes later, Lee held her hands up as she served her punishment for coming home so late, and for hitting her little brother. Lee kept her arms raised for so long that over time she began to let her arms drop slightly out of fatigue, prompting her father to tell her to straighten her arms. After this, Lee's father scolded her for returning home so late, since her father had repeatedly told her that with the onset of darkness, various monsters began to appear on the street, which could pose some kind of threat to life. Meanwhile, Hanbyul watched with a broken nose as his father scolded his older sister for being disobedient. Her father said that Lee was too young to be walking outside at such a late hour, and that while she lived in this house, she must follow all her father's rules. Then Lee would look at her father with her look of sympathy, so that her father would feel at least a little sorry for her, and tell her to put her hands down. At first, the father realized that now Lee was simply trying to push for pity, but after a few seconds he allowed his daughter to give up. The father told his daughter that from now on she must return home on time, and the younger brother looked at this and did not understand how Lee could get off so easily. Lee was about to get up and go, but her father stopped her and told her that he wanted to ask her why she came home so late. Lee stood up and said that she was just walking outside with Seho and Suhee and watching Kim act like a small and stupid child. Then the father again got angry with his daughter and told her not to communicate with Kim anymore, since because of him Lee could become a bandit like Kim, and he added that if he found out that she was walking with him, then he does not answer himself. Lee did not argue with her father, and she said that she would no longer have any contact with Kim. They explained to Kim that they now had to have fun together without her father finding out. Then Kim asked Lee why she was talking to him, since it would be the end for both of them if her father found out about it. Lee said that they just had to be careful because even though Kim annoyed her a lot, she still thought he was a pretty funny guy and that's why she liked hanging out with him. Kim was very pleased that Lee saw him as a good person and said that he also enjoyed spending time with her. At this time, Yam walked along the corridor towards the class where Kim studies to show him that he came today in a girl's school uniform. Ian felt a deep sense of humiliation and disgust for himself and his actions, which he had never felt as strongly as today. Ian did not deceive himself, and he knew about all the things that the school bullies did, to which he simply turned a blind eye. Yam used to think that in order to teach bullies a lesson and correct their behavior, he could simply use violent methods such as beating them. And Yang still thinks so, but completely reforming these bullies would require a lot of effort, which Yang was too weak for. Yang also thought that during the fight Kim called him a hypocrite, and that Yang could not answer him anything about this and somehow refute his words, since he believed that what Kim told him was the absolute truth. Then Ian came to the conclusion that he must change, well, other people who surround him, and himself in order to become better. And first he needs to focus his attention on preparing for the upcoming exams. When Yang walked into the office where Kim was studying, he saw Kim fooling around with Lee. Yang didn't pay attention to what Kim and Lee were doing, and he said that he came here to show Kim that he, as promised, came to school today in a girl's school uniform. Kim remembered that now Yang would come to him every morning to show him that Yang came in a girl's school uniform, which caused Kim a slight feeling of shame, while Lee looked at Yang's legs and thought that Yang's legs much more beautiful than her legs. Then Kim suggested that Yang no longer come to school in a skirt, and just forget about it, to which Yang said that such sympathy only irritated him more. Yang also said that he would accept and suffer punishment for his hypocrisy with full responsibility, and in turn, Lee was very impressed by Yang's thinking. After that, Ian left the office and said that now he would come here every morning and show that he came in a girl's school uniform. And after a while, Ian received a new nickname, Skirt of Remorse. One day, while Kim and Lee were at school, it started to rain heavily outside. Even though the rain started so suddenly, Kim had an umbrella with him, which his sister told him to take with him, while Lee did not have an umbrella with him. Kim looked at Lee's upset face, and he guessed that she had forgotten her umbrella today. Kim then began to mock Lee for not taking her umbrella, to which Lee threateningly asked how he knew that. Kim just continued to laugh at Lee's unpredictability as his opponent, to which Lee said that Kim was an idiot for considering her his opponent. Then Kim said that he was ready to give her his umbrella if she could defeat him in the next competition. Lee was very angry that Kim couldn't give her an umbrella just like that, and that he once again wanted to fight her. Kim then told her that he was in no way forcing her to participate in the competition, and that she could go home in wet clothes. Such a statement only angered Lee more, and in the end she decides to defeat Kim in a palm fight. In the fight with the palms, the winner is the one who has time to knock down the opponent faster, using palm claps, or if during the attempt to clap one of the players himself loses his balance and falls. However, during the competition, Kim did not even have time to clap, as Lee already managed to knock him down, and as a result, Lee got the opportunity to use an umbrella. While Lee walked home under an umbrella, Kim completely refused to go under the umbrella and was not even in a hurry to return home as quickly as possible so as not to get too wet. Then at one point Lee suggested that Kim stand under the umbrella, since they both would still have to walk in the same direction if he agreed to carry the umbrella instead of her. At first, Kim completely refused to go under the umbrella, but in the end he decided to go under the umbrella with Lee. Lee looked at Kim and thought that despite all her irritability, Kim could also sometimes show some positive emotions. After this, Lee noticed that something was wrong with Kim, and she asked him if his right shoulder was okay. At first, Kim did not understand what exactly Lee meant, and only then did he notice that his shoulder had been caught in the rain and was soaked through. While Kim and Lee were walking down the street under an umbrella, Lee noticed a small sick kitten on the road. When Kim noticed the kitten, he began to really touch him and talk about how cute he is. However, after a second, Kim immediately changed his emotional mood and pretended that he absolutely did not care about this kitten. Lee could not look at how this cute creature was tormented on the street, and then, without a word, she was able to convince Kim to take the kitten with her. In less than a minute, Kim was carrying a small, hungry and helpless kitten in his arms, pretending that he had not said anything about this kitten. Lee became interested in what Kim was going to do with the kitten, to which he replied that he would take him to live with him for a while, after which he would feed him, cure him and release him back onto the street, since he could not leave him because that his sister was allergic to cats. Then Lee asked Kim if he was allergic, and as soon as he wanted to answer, he immediately began to sneeze loudly and frequently, from which Lee concluded that Kim was also allergic to cats. Then Lee offered to leave the kitten with her, promising to take good care of it. At first Kim was a little upset that he wouldn't be able to keep the kitten, but then he thought it would be best for everyone if he gave the kitten to Lee, after which he gave her the kitten and went home. As soon as Lee returned home, she immediately asked her family not to scold her and let her leave the kitten with them for a while. However, Lee's relatives not only did not scold Lee for bringing home a homeless kitten, but even began to be touched by him, and as a result, the whole family unanimously decided to keep the kitten. Then the family immediately began to come up with a name for the kitten, and everyone decided to name the kitten Ronnie Coleman in honor of a professional and outstanding athlete. 2 weeks passed from that moment. Lee got a kitten, and Kim again began to stare at Lee with his terrifying gaze. Lee immediately became furious, and said that she was already tired of the fact that Kim still could not stop looking at her from the very beginning of the school year. However, Kim began questioning Lee about when she would finally return his umbrella to him, since 2 weeks had already passed since she took his umbrella. Then Lee apologized to Kim and invited him to go to her house so that he could collect his umbrella, and from such an offer Kim began to get even angrier, since Lee had to bring him his umbrella herself. Then Lee said that Kim could look at the kitten they picked up that day, and how this kitten managed to grow up during the time he lived at her house. Then Kim's emotional mood immediately changed, and he remembered the kitten that Lee had picked up on that rainy day. After this, Lee was approached by one of her classmates who wanted to know if she had a kitten, and Lee wanted to explain to her classmate how she got a kitten. However, the classmate no longer listened to Lee and believed that she wanted to invite Kim to her home in order to engage in some various indecencies. This classmate was so deep in thought that he didn't even have time to react when Lee hit him in the stomach with all her might for starting to imagine various bad things. While the classmate was lying on the floor in serious condition, Lee told Kim that this kitten had grown up very quickly during the time he lived with her due to the fact that this kitten eats very well and eats a lot. After class, Kim went with Lee to her house so that Kim could look at the kitten and get his umbrella back. Once at home, Lee told Kim that while she was changing clothes, he could play with Roni. Then Kim thought that if you called the kitten by name, he would definitely come running to him, after which he quietly called Roni to him. However, when Roni ran to Kim, Kim saw in front of him not a small and emaciated kitten, but a large and creepy cat, in comparison with which any dog could seem like a harmless puppy. Kim was very surprised and at the same time confused by how in 2 weeks the kitten in this family had changed so much. When the Lee family adopted the kitten, everyone immediately began feeding it special cat food. Then Hanbyul proposed to everyone the idea of adding special nutritional supplements to cat food for muscle growth, and all family members approved of this option of feeding the kitten, which is why such a small kitten turned into a mountain of muscles in a matter of days. It was at that moment that Kim realized what Lee was telling him when she told him how much the kitten had grown. At that moment, Kim heard someone outside opening the apartment door, and then Kim thought that if one of Lee's relatives saw him here, he would be finished. In a panic, Kim began to think about where it would be better for him to hide, since no one had found him. Hanbyul, who had just returned home from school, entered the apartment. Then Kim, in a panic, decides to simply hide his face under his shirt, hoping that Hanbyul won't recognize him. However, Hanbyul immediately recognized the same yellow-haired anchovy that he saw with Lee, and after that he wanted to finish off Kim, but Kim manages to dodge in time. Even though Kim was able to dodge, he was unable to return to his normal position, causing him to grab onto Hanbyul's beard to avoid falling to the floor. Lee heard loud screams and quickly found out what happened. However, when Lee walked out into the hallway, she saw her little brother and Kim in a somewhat awkward position. Then Lee didn't understand, since when Hanbyul and Kim had such a close relationship, and Kim and Hanbyul tried to explain to Lee that this was not what she was thinking about now. At that moment, someone else was heard opening the apartment door, and the father had already entered the apartment. When the father entered the apartment, he saw a yellow-haired anchovy lying on the floor under Hanbyul. Then the father was furious with what he saw, and everyone around understood that most likely this would not end well. Immediately after my mother entered the apartment, and hit my father on the head for swearing in front of the children. Then the father calmed down a little and asked Lee, who herself did not fully understand what was happening here, why Kim was at their house. Then Li said that now she also doesn't understand anything what's going on here, and this scared Kim a little, that she couldn't really explain anything, and he decides to try to explain everything to her father on his own. After a short explanation, Father Lee concluded that Kim had broken into their house to look at the kitten. Kim said that he did not do anything strange in their house, after which he planned to leave their house. However, before Kim left the apartment, Lee's mother suggested that he first eat a little before Kim went home, and neither Kim nor Lee's father liked this outcome. Then Kim tried to explain as politely and clearly as possible that there would be no need to cook food for him either, and Father Lee supported Kim's words, hoping that he would leave the apartment as quickly as possible. Kim also added that his older sister is waiting for him at home, who is probably already worried that her brother has not returned home for so long. As a result, after several unsuccessful attempts to leave the house as quickly as possible, Kim still had to stay for a family dinner. Then Lee asked Kim why he still stayed for the family dinner, to which Kim said that it would be somehow indecent when he was shown hospitality, and he refused. Meanwhile, the father was thinking about why Kim didn't immediately leave their house, to which Kim replied that he was pretty tired of being bullied. The atmosphere of the family feast became so tense and restless that Lee began to have trouble breathing. A few minutes later, Lee's mother served everyone dinner, which contained a lot of protein and did not look very appetizing, and at that moment Kim realized that it would be better for him to leave this house immediately. While eating, Father Lee asked Kim what his name was, since he still didn't know his real name, and Kim introduced himself to Father Lee as Kim Woojun to himself, and said that despite his appearance, he had a very masculine name. Kim then corrected Father Lee and said that he was Kim Woojun, to which the father said that there was no difference, and Kim said that both options were not only wrong, but equally terrible. Then Father Lee became angry because he did not understand how to address Kim. During the conversation, Hanbyul threw a chicken breast towards Kim, which immediately ended up in Kim's mouth. Lee immediately began to scold her little brother because she had already told him many times not to throw food. At this moment, Kim and Lee's father looked at each other and thought that they both did not like each other. Kim decided that he shouldn't linger in this house and decides to just eat this dinner as soon as possible. However, when Kim tried to lift the spoon, he noticed that it was too heavy. Father Lee looked at Kim and thought that Kim was too weak to even eat in this house, since in this family, even the clothes of each family member weighed at least 5 kilograms. Father Lee also expected that such a situation would cause Kim to feel disappointment and self-hatred. Kim watched as Lee not only picked up her spoon with ease, but also calmly ate her food. Then Kim believed that Lee had an ordinary spoon, and to confirm his theory, he asked Lee to give him his spoon. The father looked at Kim's behavior and became incredibly furious as he watched Kim and Lee. Lee's father felt that Kim wanted to give his daughter an indirect kiss right in front of him. In his father's eyes, Lee Kim looked like a psychopath who liked to have fun with girls, drink, smoke, do drugs and kill people. When Kim took Lee's spoon in his other hand, he noticed that both of these spoons weighed exactly the same. Then Kim began to look at the spoons in the hope of understanding what material they were made of. Father Lee imagined Kim pulling Lee's spoon towards his mouth and starting to lick it like the last pervert, and this angered Father Lee even more. Father Lee did not hold back his emotions and decided to hit Kim with all his might, but Kim manages to dodge the blow. Lee watched as her enraged father tried to finish off the frightened Kim. In the end, Lee not only breaks down and begins to freak out due to her father's unacceptable behavior. Lee immediately grabbed Kim by the neck and went outside to see Kim off. From this act, Lee's father did not continue to be angry because of the behavior of his daughter, who did not give him the opportunity to finish off Kim. A minute later, angry at her father, Lee stood in front of the front door, still holding Kim by his clothes. When Lee let Kim go, Kim told her that her father had acted very rudely towards him. However, Lee did not listen to Kim, and she simply stood facing the door, thinking about something very important to her. A couple of minutes later, Lee went down with Kim to the street to see him off. Kim said that it was not necessary for Lee to accompany him, to which she said that it was not difficult for her, and that she was going to go outside anyway to get some fresh air. After that, a little frightened, Kim said goodbye to Lee and headed home, feeling a sense of embarrassment and shame in front of Lee. After Kim left, Lee sat on the stairs and thought about how ashamed she was of her father's behavior. Meanwhile, 3 guys were walking down the street, discussing together the topic of their unsuccessful football game today. When the guys passed by a residential building, one of the guys named Young Hosa saw Lee and could not take his eyes off her. The rest of the guys tried to shout to the guy so that he would focus on the conversation again, but he was too carried away by Lee's appearance. Soon, the embarrassed Hosa was able to take his eyes off Lee and turn his attention to his friends. At this moment, one of Hosa's friends also noticed Lee sitting on the stairs. Hosa thought that his friend and Lee knew each other, but his friend said that they did not know each other personally, and Rodan from his friends, who also studies at Junseo High School, told him about her. Hosa's friend also noticed that Lee looked completely different from what his friends told him, suggesting that Lee was just a little out of shape at the moment. After this, Hosa's friend suggested continuing to talk about football, but Hosa himself demanded from his friend some more information about Lee. Hosa's friends were surprised by this demand, to which he said that he was just interested. Despite such a naive attempt by Hosa to justify himself, they immediately realized that Hosa simply fell in love. Then one of Hosa's friends told him that his sister was studying at the same school and he could learn something else from her. Hosa immediately rushed home to find out more about Lee from his sister as soon as possible. A couple of minutes later, Hosa was already at home, and the first thing he did was ask his older sister Sabine what she knew about Lee. Sabine didn't understand why her little brother was so interested in Lee, and Hosa said that his bullies from Junseo's school often talk about her. Sabine said that she knows a little about Lee, since recently they have started talking a lot about how Kim Woojun is running after Lee. Hosa was immediately afraid that Lee already had some boyfriend at school. However, Hosa immediately calmed down as Sabine said that Kim did not have any interest in Lee as a girl. Then Hosa asked Sabine what else she knew about L, and she remembered one recent incident from school. That day, Sabine remembered how she told her friends how one of the boys from Hosa's school confessed his feelings to her. Her friends were very interested in who this guy was, and Sabine started looking for photographs of this guy. Sabine showed her friends the photo and said that she wasn't interested in younger guys, so they told her and Hanbyul, telling her that he looked very mature for his age. Then Sabine told Hosa that his younger brother Lee was studying with him in a parallel class. The next day at school, Hosa still couldn't concentrate on anything, and his friends decided that he had simply started consuming something forbidden. However, in reality, Hosa just couldn't stop thinking about Lee, and all he wanted was to see her in person. At the next break, Hosa wanted Handil to talk to him about the possibility of meeting Lee. On the way, Hosa asked one of the guys what class Handil was in, and he pointed him to the 5th room. Finding himself near the 5th office, Hosa tried to imagine what Handil might look like. Hosa remembered his sister's words about how Handil looked very mature, and he imagined in his head the image of a handsome and educated guy who should be liked by all the girls in school. Then Hosa began to worry that if Handil really looked like this, then Lee would hardly be able to see him as a man. But despite this, Hosa, due to his childish naivety, counted on the fact that he would not give up under any circumstances and would do his best to achieve a meeting with Lee. At that moment, one of the guys passing by looked at Hosa and thought that he was crazy. Hosa happened to see this guy and asked where Handil was now, and this guy pointed Hosa to the place where Handil was sitting at that moment. Then Hosa saw a menacing and pumped-up man who was literally sitting in the air, while the desk was simply hanging on his feet. Hosa thought that this guy decided to joke with him, after which he was going to hit the guy for such a bad joke. Hosa couldn't believe that this pumped-up pile of muscles was Handil, because this hunk didn't even look like a high school student. Handil overheard his classmates' conversation with Hosa and turned to Hosa to find out what he needed from him. When Handil approached Hosa, he wanted to see if he really was Lee's younger brother, and Handil confirmed his guess. Hosa then approached Handil even closer and asked him to introduce him to his older sister. Hosa's expectations Handil thought for a moment, and said that he wouldn't do it. Hosa didn't understand why Handil refused to help him, and Handil's classmates said that it was no surprise that he didn't even know him, and was already asking for such a favor. Hanbyul said that his classmate was right and that he couldn't just introduce his beloved sister to some stranger. However, Hanbyul said that he would think about this request if Hosu gave him 500 grams of protein, and then Hosu offered him a whole box of protein. At this moment, Hosu and Hanbyul managed to conclude a lucrative contract with each other, in which everyone will benefit. The next day, Hanbyul and Hosu met near the school where Hanbyul expected to see his protein. Then Hosu showed a whole box with a bunch of bags filled with protein nutritional supplement. Hanbyul was a little annoyed that Hosu brought vanilla-flavored protein since he preferred chocolate-flavored protein. After that, Hanbyul took out a small knife and pierced one of the protein bags to evaluate its quality by taste. Even though Hanbyul was not satisfied with the taste of the protein, he was still happy with the quality of the protein, but he said that the volume was a little small. Hosu then reminded Hanbyul that they were just schoolchildren who, due to finances, could not afford to buy protein in such large quantities. Then Hosu began to accuse Hanbyul of not knowing how to run a business and follow the terms of their contract. In response, Hanbyul said that not only did Hosu Dal prepare a protein for him with his least favorite flavor, but the volume of protein was small, and if he did not receive a few more packages, he would cancel their contract. Hosu said that if the contract is invalid, then only Hanbyul will be the loser. After that, Hosu and Hanbyul began to bargain over how many more protein packets Hosu should give Hanbyul, and while Hanbyul demanded 7 more packets, Hosu insisted on 5 packets. After a couple of minutes of trading, Hanbyul and Hosu agreed on 6 more bags of protein, and in the meantime, Hanbyul will try to find out from her sister her ideal type of guy. After school, Hanbyul was going to talk to his sister, but he had not yet had time to say anything, and Lee had already begun to refuse him, hoping that now her younger brother would try to take the TV remote control away from her in order to turn on cartoons on TV. However, Hanbyul said that this is not what he was here for and that he wanted to have a serious talk with his older sister, after which Lee immediately calmed down. Hanbyul directly asked his sister if she had an ideal type of guy, and in response, his sister pointed her finger at the TV. The TV was showing a program about various celebrities, and one of the famous music artists was on the screen. Lee said that she likes tall and reasonably muscular guys with kind eyes and a smile. Lee also added that she can't stand guys who act like tough and dangerous bullies, because she believed that first of all, a guy should be kind. At this time, Kim was walking with his friend, and his ear suddenly itched, indicating that someone was discussing him. Then Hanbyul thought that Kim and Hosu had a lot in common both in physique and character. Hanbyul asked his sister to accept feelings of sympathy from Hosu, and Lee immediately demanded not to say such things to her again. Meanwhile, Kim's ear began to itch more and more, and he did not understand who was talking so much about him. Then Hanbyul compared the image of Hosu in his head with the image of the ideal guy for Lee, and he realized that guys like Hosu definitely could not please his sister. Hanbyul also understood that if his sister didn't like Hosu, then he would have to return all the protein he had previously received. The next day, Hanbyul met Hosu at school and told him that his sister likes tall and kind guys with handsome eyes and a sweet smile, and that Hosu is the complete opposite of that type of guy. However, Hosu said with all confidence that he fits the bill perfectly, and therefore he is perfect for Lee. At that moment, the boy whom Hosu constantly mocked ran up to Hosu to give him the bun that he asked to buy. However, when Hosu started scolding the guy for not buying him banana milk, Hanbyul only became more convinced that Hosu was definitely not the kind of guy his sister might like. The frightened boy said that he wanted to buy Hosu banana milk, but not only did he not have enough money, but the buffet had also run out of it. Josu was not at all happy with what the boy said to him, and without warning he punched him in the face. Hosu also told the boy that he could buy him something to drink with his own money, and Hanbyul became more and more convinced every second that his sister definitely wouldn't like a guy like Hosu. While the guy was leaving, Hosu shouted to him that he had a lot of experience as an errand boy, and this statement made one of the students laugh very much. Then angry at Hosu, Hanbyul left him and told him that their contract was terminated from now on. Hosu said that in that case, Hanbyul should return to him all the protein that he received, but Hanbyul said that he had already eaten all the protein and he would return everything to him in money. Hosu then blocked Hanbyul's path further, and said that he couldn't lose all his trust in him just because he was having so much fun with his friends. However, Hanbyul said that he didn't have any trust in Hosu from the very beginning, and that before that he just thought of Hosu as an ordinary guy, but now Hanbil saw him as another trash, after which he moved on. The last straw for Hosu was when Hanbil told him that now he even felt sorry for introducing his sister to such a freak as Hosu. Hosu's friend saw that he was beside himself with anger, and he tried to calm his friend down a little. Out of excess emotion, Hosu took the nearest chair and threw it at Hanbil with all his anger, but Hanbil himself didn't even fall. Everyone was shocked at how Hosu, without any fear, was able to find the courage to anger a man who was many times larger and 10 times stronger than him. Still without any sense of fear, Hosu shouted at the enraged Hanbil. Then Hosu's friends tried to stop their friend so that he would not commit another rash act. Then Hosu's friends began to persuade him to apologize to Hanbil as quickly as possible, since he could easily swat him like a fly. But this did not stop Hosu at all. Even though Hanbil was very angry with Hosu, he still had no intention of hitting him. Hanbil's father told him that under no circumstances should he beat a person, since any careless blow from him could easily kill a person. Hosu continued to provoke Hanbil into aggression, but Hanbil said that he did not intend to use his strength for violence. Hosu was shocked by such restraint and stubbornness, and he promised himself that he would definitely force him to fight him. For 2 weeks, Hosu tried various ways to anger Hanbil and provoke him into a fight, but Hanbil was still unshakable and restrained. Hosu's friends were surprised at how Hosu kept trying to piss off the strongest guy in school. Hosu went so far as to anger Hanbil that he even braided 2 braids in Hanbil's beard, but Hanbil didn't care about that either. Every day Hosu's anger at Hanbil grew more and more, and his provocations became more and more cruel and flawed, but all this time Hanbil was as impenetrable in both body and spirit. After 4 weeks, Hosu and his friends were smoking on the roof of the school, and any minute their lesson was supposed to start, and at first they were going to skip class, but the teacher was very picky and strict. Then the guys immediately put out their cigarettes on the body of Hanbil, who was not even in pain. One of the friends was shocked that Hosu and several other guys were so fearlessly putting out their cigarettes on Hanbil. However, Hosu said that Hanbil even likes it when they do this to him. Then Hosu again began to persuade Hanbil to fight him, but Hanbil himself repeatedly said that he would not use force. After classes, Hosu sat on Hanbil's shoulders so that he could take him home. After a couple of minutes of such skating, Hosu saw Lee in the distance, and he was afraid that she would now see him in this position. Then Hosu immediately jumped off Hanbil so that Lee would not think that he was somehow mocking her younger brother. His friends were somewhat surprised that Hosu got down so quickly, but he told his friends to be as quiet as possible. Hosu also told all his friends and Hanbil to move to one of the alleys as soon as possible. When everyone hid in the alley, Hosu said that he saw Lee and he was going to take this opportunity to talk to her. Hosu also asked Hanbil to pretend to be his friend so that he would have a better chance of getting Lee to like him. A minute later, Lee saw Hanbil in the distance walking down the street with several guys, and at first glance it seemed that Hanbil was actually friends with these guys. Once near Lee Hosu, he immediately pretended that he was seeing Hanbil's older sister for the first time. However, Lee told Hosu that she didn't know him, and Hosu introduced himself to her as Hanbil's best friend, and that Hanbil had told him a lot about his older sister. Hanbil could only watch as Hosu blatantly lied to his older sister. Hosu kept telling Lee that she was very beautiful, and how he envied Hanbil that he had such an older sister. At one point, Lee interrupted Hosu and said that he had very beautiful hands, after which she took his hand. Lee said that Hosu's hands were as beautiful and delicate as a girl's, and at first glance it seemed that everything was fine. Hosu's hand very tightly, which caused him great pain. Lee then stepped on Hosu's foot, grabbed his neck and asked if they were bullying her little brother. Hosu and his friends were shocked that Lee found out that they all bullied Hanbil together. Without waiting for an answer, Lee grabbed Hosu even tighter and did not let him go until he answered. Then Lee began to threaten Hosu and said that if he didn't tell her the whole truth right now, he would face severe punishment. In an attempt to somehow avoid his fate, Hosu pretended that he did not understand what Lee was telling him. Seeing how Hosu was brazenly lying to Lee's face, she only grabbed his shoulder even harder. Then Hosu's friends started telling Lee that there was some misunderstanding between them, and that they were actually good friends with Hanbil. Then Lee looked at Hanbil and pointed out to the guys his braids on his beard and traces of cigarette ash, given the fact that he is not friends with people who smoke. Then Hosu and his friends told Lee that they did not smoke any cigarettes at all, but Lee pointed out to them the smell of cigarettes that came from them. Then Lee told the guys that if they confessed, the punishment would be much less severe. Then one of Hosu's friends approached Lee and said that she just thought that the smell was coming from them, and that she was blaming them without any solid evidence. Then Lee said that if she found cigarettes on them, it would be very bad for all of them. Hosu's friend said that if Lee continued to hold Hosu's shoulder, she would not be able to prove that he had cigarettes in his backpack, and Lee reluctantly let Hosu go. When Lee removed her hand from Hosu, his friend immediately decided to take the opportunity to escape. However, Lee manages to grab Hosu's friend by the backpack and throw him to the ground, preventing him from escaping. When Hosu's friend found himself lying down on the ground, Lee told him to show him his backpack, hoping to find cigarettes there. A few seconds later, Lee took a pack of cigarettes from Hosu's friend's backpack, and all Hosu's friends and he himself understood that they were doomed. After this, Lee turned to Hanbil and asked him to tell the whole truth without fear of any consequences. Lee also told Hanbil that no matter what happens, she will definitely side with her younger brother and stand up for him. At this moment, Hanbil tearfully told his older sister that these guys had really bullied him for a long time. Hanbil's words, Lee told Hosu that if he doesn't confess and apologize to Hanbil right now, then she will find any evidence against him and finish him off. Hosu had no choice but to take off his backpack, show it to Lee and apologize to Hanbil for his behavior, which he did. Hosu returned home late in the evening, and Sabine began to scold him for the fact that recently he began to come home so late more and more often. However, Sabine immediately stopped scolding Hosu when she saw that her younger brother came home with bruises, contusions, and other injuries. At one point, Hosu simply could not stand it, and without any strength, he picked it up and fell to the floor, which greatly frightened her older sister. The next day, the school's students learned that it was time to prepare and take exams. Kim still invited Lee to compete with each other, but Lee did not pay any attention to him, since all her thoughts were only about the upcoming exams. When Kim finally realized that exams would be held soon, Lee asked her classmates to write some pleasant and encouraging words of encouragement to each other in their notebooks. Then all of Lee's classmates told her that instead of doing such nonsense, she would better start preparing as soon as possible. In response to this, Lee began to freak out a little, and eventually her classmates agreed to write words of encouragement to each other in their notebooks. Lee was surprised that the first person who wanted to write something in her notebook was Kim, but he wanted to write in her notebook that he wanted her to fall in the rankings. Lee still couldn't wait for everyone else to write something in her notebook, so that she could then read all the kind and pleasant words that her classmates left for her. At that moment, Sabine approached Kim and took Lee's notebook from him, not allowing him to finish writing. However, instead of writing something in Lee's notebook, she tore her notebook into small pieces. Sabine then turned to Lee and told her to leave the classroom to discuss something. Then Lee asked the evil Sabine why she tore her notebook, which is why all her positive attitude immediately disappeared. Then Sabine and her friends once again ordered Lee to leave the classroom and follow them. At that moment, Siho appeared, who recognized Sabine, since they had previously studied together in middle school, and Siho said that in middle school, she also provoked people into conflict and caused general chaos in other classes. Then Sabine said that they were still in the same class. Siho was shocked by what she heard, since until that moment she had never noticed Sabine in her class. Kim then said that if Sabine wanted to start a fight with Lee, then the rest of the students might find out about it, and Sabine said that this was the reason why she wanted Lee to follow her. Even though Lee wanted to start studying for her exams, she still knew that this situation was inevitable, so she still followed Sabine to get it over with as soon as possible. Once on the roof of the school, Sabine told Lee that she found out that last night Lee beat his younger brother Hosu. Then Sabine said that if Lee apologized to her brother on his knees, then everything would end quickly and without conflict. However, Lee said that she will not apologize to Hosu for beating him. Then Sabine's friends immediately began to demand from Lee that she follow all the instructions, but Lee did not listen to them. However, Lee, in response to such statements, only showed Sabine her fist, showing her that Hosu would not expect any apology from her. This was the last straw for Sabine, and she became even more angry with Lee. Sabine then walked up to Lee and grabbed her by the hair, calling her names and telling her that if she had just apologized, it would have ended without a fight. However, Lee was not taken aback and grabbed Sabine by the neck, after which she kneed her in the stomach with all her might. From such severe pain, Sabine fell to the ground and grabbed her stomach, while Sabine's friends simply stood aside and looked at Sabine in fear. Meanwhile, Lee's classmates stood outside the door and looked at how easily she neutralized Sabine. Kim said he thought Lee and Sabin would just grab each other's hair and start screaming. Lee told Sabine that Hosu was the first to bully Hanbyul, who put up with his antics for a long time, and yesterday Hosu got what he deserved from her. Then Lee wanted to teach Sabine a lesson for breaking into her class, tearing up her notebook, pushing her onto the roof and starting to pull her hair. Last night, when Sabin was putting Hosu to bed, she tried to ask him who beat him, to which Hosu replied that he just fell. Sabine, of course, did not believe such a stupid and naive excuse. Hosu still continued to claim that he simply stumbled and stumbled badly, hiding the whole truth from his sister. Hosu was incredibly ashamed of being beaten so badly by the girl he was in love with. Meanwhile, Sabine continued her attempts to find out from Hosu the truth about how he got so badly injured. Then Sabine grabbed her younger brother in the hope that at least this way she could hear the whole truth from him. In the end, Hosu still couldn't stand it, and told Sabin the truth that he was beaten by Lee Seoyoung. Then Sabine promised that she would do everything to make Lee beg for forgiveness from Hosu on her knees. From such a strong blow, Sabine immediately began to cry loudly, hoping that Lee would at least have a little mercy on her. Lee was somewhat confused by how a girl like Sabine, who a few minutes ago had been acting like a dangerous and tough girl, suddenly started crying like a little girl. Meanwhile, Sabine's friends began to calm her down and tell Lee what an angry and cruel girl she was. Lee then told Sabine's friends that it was her fault that she started the fight by grabbing her hair and pulling it with all her might. Kim remembered that Seho said that she had known Sabin since middle school. Seho said that in middle school, Sabine was known for constantly provoking everyone into conflict, and she would pick on both the regular students and the bullies. And one day Seho also came face to face with her. 2 years ago, during their turn to clean the school, Seho asked Sabin and her friends not to leave while cleaning next time. But despite the fact that Seho very politely asked Sabine not to break the cleaning rules anymore, Sabine had no intention of taking this request seriously. Then Sabin said that if other girls with whom Seho had to clean the school also have such complaints, then let them come to her together and express all their complaints to her. Seho said that those girls left because they were all afraid of Sabine, and that's why only Seho came to her. Then Sabin began to attack Seho and asked her if those girls were afraid to approach her, then why Seho wasn't afraid. Then Sabin continued to attack Seho more and press her finger on her forehead, so that she could then hit her, which did not suit Seho very much. Sabin's friends started making fun of Seho, and saying that they didn't like her from the very beginning. Seho had recently started wearing makeup, and she suspected that Seho was doing this on purpose, which would make Appa like her even more. Kisun, who already showed sympathy for Seho, but Seho herself refuted such an assumption in every possible way. Sabine then told Seho that if she really didn't care about Kisun, then she should stop responding to his messages, and Seho said that she just didn't want to ignore someone like Kisun. At one point, Sabine reminded Seho that Seho had no friends at all in elementary school, and Seho became extremely uncomfortable remembering that time. After that, Sabin hit Seho on the forehead with her finger, and said that if she doesn't want to get herself into unnecessary trouble, then she should not stand out and know her place. At first, Seho almost cried because of the upholstery, but she remembered the words of Kim, who told her that she should not allow others to hurt her. Sabin and her friends were about to go home, but at one point Seho called Sabin. Seho running towards her, who was ready to punch her in the face. After such an unexpected blow, Sabine fell to the floor and began to cry while her friends tried to calm her down. While Sabine cried loudly from the intense pain, Seho laughed loudly because she finally had the courage to fight back for the first time. When Kim heard this story from Seho, he praised her for not allowing Sabin to continue to hurt her. At that moment, Kim heard someone climbing the stairs and walking towards them. Fearing that it might be the teacher, Kim, Seho and the rest of the guys decided to hide as soon as possible. Sabine did not stop crying and told Lee that she specially called Kisun here so that he could easily rebuff her. When Kisun climbed to the roof of the school, he saw Sabine upset and asked her what happened here. Sabine then pointed at Lee and told Kisun that she had offended her and that he should deal with her. Kisun was surprised at how such a seemingly harmless girl was able to injure Hosu and Sabine. In middle school, Sabine could not ask Kisun to deal with Seho, since at that time he was in love with her, but now Sabine can ask him to deal with Lee. Kisun approached Lee and said that if she didn't apologize to Sabin and Hosu right now, then he would have to use force to punish Lee. However, Ki-seon didn't even have time to finish speaking before Lee kicked him in the stomach with all her might. Lee's blow was so strong that Ki-seon could not stand on his feet after such a blow, and immediately flew into the wall. After the blow, Lee reminded Sabine that she herself said that she wanted to pull herself together and live without conflicts. But in the end she called a bully to the roof who had the courage to threaten her. Kim, Seho and the rest of the guys who were watching were shocked by how strong Lee's punches were. Lee told Sabine that she wasn't surprised Sabine had such an evil brother if his older sister wasn't behaving any better, and then Lee set out to raise Sabine. Then Lee was already about to attack Sabine, and her desire to restore justice and teach Sabine a lesson could not be stopped. Sabine was even more frightened, and she thought that she simply would not survive this attack. However, instead of beating Sabine to a pulp, Lee began tickling her, causing Sabine to start laughing hysterically. Lee said it didn't hit her in the stomach hard at all, and she was just pretending it hurt, and Sabine said she'd rather be killed than tickled. At that moment, Lee remembered how as a child she often played with Hanbyul, tickling him until he fell. Kim and the guys looked at what was happening and did not understand how cruel Lee could be if she could start tickling a person so easily. Lee then continued to tickle Sabine until she apologized and admitted her guilt. Kim looked at Lee and thought that each time he saw more and more brutal methods of Lee's fight against the enemy, because of which his image of the battle with her became more and more cloudy and implausible. While studying for exams, Kim wanted to ask Lee for a textbook again, and the teacher didn't like the way Kim was wandering around the class without the teacher's permission, and the teacher told Kim to stand still for the rest of the lesson. When the lesson ended, Kim suggested that Lee and his friend go to the buffet during recess, and everyone agreed with this proposal. However, even before Kim, Lee and their friend had time to leave the classroom, Woo Jun came in to see them. Jun said that she was looking for Lee So-yeon and that she wanted to talk to her about something. In the hallway, a couple of friends were discussing with each other how Lee So-yeon was able to defeat Appa Ki-seon, who fought in high school. Jun passed by these guys, who wanted to know where Lee So-yeon was now. Jun figured that if these rumors were true, then she would be the right person for the job. However, Jun was somewhat embarrassed by the fact that Lee was much shorter than she expected. Jun asked Lee if it was true that she was able to defeat Appa recently Kisona, and Lee said that it was so. Jun then said that she would like to give Lee a little test to see if she would be a good match for her. Lee said that she didn't mind taking a quick test since she was in a hurry to get to the buffet. Lee wanted to find out from Jun what this test was, but before she could finish speaking, Jun was about to attack Lee. Despite Jun's unexpected and fast attack, Lee still managed to dodge her. Just before Jun was about to hit Lee again, she deliberately stepped on Lee's foot so that she couldn't dodge anymore. Jun told Lee that it was time for her to stop dodging attacks, and that Lee should at least try to attack her too. However, even with her leg pinned down, Lee still manages to lean back strongly, thereby again avoiding the blow. While Lee remained in this position, she was able to stay on her feet and grab Jun's clothes. Also, Lee was able to not only return to her original position, but also hit Jun's foreheads with all her might. Lee's blow turned out to be so serious that Jun could not resist such a blow and fell to the floor, while Lee herself could continue to stand on her feet without any problems. However, Lee's blow was not strong enough to completely overpower Jun, and she was able to get back to her feet in less than a second. After that, Jun ran up to Lee and grabbed her, which scared Lee very much at first. However, this time Jun did not intend to attack Lee, and she told her that she would join her in the sports club. Kim and Lee were surprised that Jun suggested this way to invite Lee to her sports club. At that moment, Lee became disgusted at the thought that Jun hadn't thought to just talk to her about joining the club. Jun looked at Lee and thought that she could not have achieved such a strong and resilient body with simple training, and Jun concluded that Lee had been involved in sports for a very long time. At the same time, Kim was surprised that Jun was very popular with the girls, who at that very second brought her a handkerchief so that she could wipe her wounds. Lee told Jun that she hadn't exercised for a long time, but Jun just couldn't believe it, and she assumed that Lee was just a little shy. Then Jun was wondering how Lee was able to achieve such large and strong muscles. Lee said that she didn't even have any large muscles, and Kim and her friend didn't understand what Lee meant. Lee also added that she has always had such a body, and that her body itself remembers the workouts that she did as a child. When Jun heard what Lee told her, she thought she was just joking. While Jun argued with Lee about how it was simply impossible to have such a body from birth, Kim remembered how much her family members had toned bodies, and he thought that Lee's strong body might actually be the result of genetics. At this point, an angry Lee told Jun that she simply hated sports, which is why she refused to join their sports club. At that moment, the school bell rang, and Jun decides to interrupt the conversation with Lee until the next break. While Jun left the office, Lee could only think that because of Jun she never had time to go to the buffet. A few hours later, all classes were over at Junseo's school, and Lee was getting ready to go home and start studying for her exams. At first, Lee wanted to invite Kim to go home together, but at that moment Kim was going to go with Seho to study for the exam at a local cafe. In this situation, what surprised Lee most was that Kim himself decided to come to his senses and start preparing for the exams. Then Lee also thought that it would be better if she went to study for the exam in the school library. Dumbbell flew towards her, which she managed to catch. As Lee later noted, this dumbbell was thrown at her by Jun, who again wanted to talk to Lee about her joining the sports club. Lee was very angry with Jun while she was telling someone that Lee really deserves to be in the sports club. Out of excess anger, Lee approached Jun and hit her on the head with all her might for daring to throw a dumbbell at her. Lee's blow was so strong that Jun suddenly lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Later, an unknown voice apologized to Lee because Jun showed her bad manners. At that moment, Kim Cabin, who was the head of the sports club, appeared in front of Lee. The rest of the students looked at Cabin and didn't believe that he was even a high school student. At this point, Kim confused Cabin with Hanbyul, to which Lee replied that Hanbyul had dark hair, but Kim was still haunted by the thought that Cabin was still somewhat similar to Hanbyul. The other students were surprised that Lee's younger brother looked just like Cabin. Cabin apologized to Lee and said that he would like to talk to Lee for a while. Cabin said that Lee should join their sports club, and Lee felt that Cabin chose not the best way to apologize to the girl. Lee then told Cabin that she would never join their sports club, as she simply hated sports. Cabin told Lee that even if Lee didn't play sports, she still had a very strong body. Cabin then imagined how strong Lee could become if she trained to her full potential. At this moment, Lee began to shout even more strongly to Cabin that she would not, under any circumstances, join their sports club. Then Cabin began to persuade Lee to join their sports club, and he was ready to do anything to make Lee change her mind and join them. Lee told Cabin that if he could defeat him, she would consider his offer. However, Cabin said that he could not fight with the girl, as this would be considered a manifestation of his weakness and baseness in society. At this moment, Kim felt uneasy about what Cabin said right now. Meanwhile, Cabin continued to say that anyone who even tries to imagine fighting a girl is already considered trash who needs to have his personal belongings torn off. Then Lee agreed with Cabin's statement, and said that she herself was ready to tear off the personal belongings of someone who wanted a fight with a girl. Kim felt worse every second because if they had found out that Kim wanted to fight Lee, the two of them would have torn off his belongings and made a girl out of him. The next day, Cabin began looking for Lee to try to once again discuss the issue of her joining the sports club with her. During the search, Cabin thought only that he must, by any means necessary, ensure that Lee became a new member of the sports club. Lee knew that Cabin was looking for her, and she constantly tried to hide in various places so that Cabin would not find her. At this moment, Soo-hee suddenly appeared next to Lee, who accidentally scared Lee. Afterwards, Lee and Soo-hee sat on the stairs, and Soo-hee said that before that, she thought that Lee worked out hard every day to always stay in shape, to which Lee replied that she hated sports and that she didn't exercise anymore a long time ago. Lee told Soo-hee how as children, her father constantly subjected her and Hanbyul to various trainings so that in the future they would be able to protect both themselves and others without any problems. Sometimes Lee's father would throw her and little Hanbyul off a high cliff so that they could learn how to land so that they could survive falling from any height. Also, the father often forced Lee and Hanbyul to uproot large trees and squat with these trees on their shoulders. But the most hated thing for Lee and Hanbyul was how their father put them both in battle against a wild bear. So he listened to everything Lee told her, and she was in deep shock at how her father abused her and her younger brother as children. However, despite what Soo-hee heard from Lee just now, she said that on the other hand, she is even a little jealous of Lee. Soo-hee said that she had tried many times to lose weight, and every time she gave up, and she wanted someone to make her pull herself together and start exercising. But Lee thought that Soo-hee seemed to have no extra weight. Soo-hee said that since she started being friends with Seho, she noticed that compared to Seho's legs, her legs looked a little thick. Soo-hee was also jealous of Seho not only because of her slender and cute legs, but also because she had an almost skinny belly. At one point, Soo-hee felt a little upset that she couldn't get in shape, and Lee immediately began trying to calm her friend down. June suddenly appeared around the corner, trying to find her along with Kabin. June as quickly as possible, but she came here for a different reason. Lee stopped when June said that Lee didn't have to join their sports club. June also said that she didn't want to force Lee into the sports club, and that she just wanted to talk to Lee. June sat next to Lee and Soo-hee and said that when Lee talked about how she didn't want to join the sports club, June thought that Lee was just trying to play hard to get. June also said that because of Lee's appearance, she thought that she really liked to play sports and do various exercises. Lee said that she has a completely normal, unremarkable physique, while June stared at Lee's toned legs. Soo-hee noticed from June's gaze that her doubts about Lee's strength still did not leave her head. June then said that she just wanted more girls in their sports club since June was the only girl who attended the sports club. Lee wished June luck in finding a new girl for the sports club, but she said that she had already found that girl. At that moment, Lee and Soo-hee began to look at each other, and after a couple of seconds Soo-hee realized that she was the same girl that June had chosen to visit the sports club. At that moment, Soo-hee was very scared that she would be working out in a sports club among a bunch of strong and muscular men. Towards evening, one of the hooligans came to the park to talk to Young about Kim. Meanwhile, Ian was sitting on a bench in a skirt, holding a textbook in his hand, and was unhappy that this hooligan had come so late. At this point, the bully began to laugh at Ian due to the fact that Ian failed to defeat Kim, which is why he now has to wear a skirt. Then the bully began to laugh at Ian even more, suspecting that because of his studies, Ian had forgotten how to fight, and because of this Kim defeated him. However, Yang said that he wears the skirt solely as a sign of atonement for his past mistakes. The bully sat down next to Ian and asked him what Kim was like during the fight. Yang said that when fighting with Kim, it seemed like he wasn't trying to use any tactics or techniques. Yang also added that Kim's most important weapon is rage, thanks to which Kim does not hold back and can fight even in the most difficult condition. The bully was not at all frightened by such a description of Kim, and he only became more eager to fight with Kim as soon as possible. Yang told the bully that if he wanted to fight with Kim, then he should only fight with him when exams are over at school, so as to make too much noise during school hours. The bully felt that something was wrong with Yang, because before he would have told him to get rid of Kim as soon as possible, but Yang said that recently he has no right to tell the bullies. Yang was about to return home as soon as possible to better prepare for the exams, but the bully stopped him. Before Yang left, the bully asked Yang who he thought would win this fight, him or Kim. Junseo's school was considered one of the most dangerous schools, where only the most inveterate hooligans studied. Since Yang Soo-hyun entered Junseo High School, all the bullies have turned into exemplary students, thanks to which school discipline has become normalized over time. However, after a fight with Kim, in which Yang was defeated, Yang stopped maintaining order and discipline at school. But despite the fact that Yang stopped correcting the school's hooligans, the discipline at school did not become worse, since now Kim began to monitor justice and school order. While Yang tried to give the bullies a second chance so they could change their ways, Kim immediately made it clear to the bullies that he would personally deal with any bully who tried to disrupt the school order. Compared to Yang's method of raising bullies, Kim's method of action seemed more effective and efficient. One day, Kim was able to protect one of the school's students from hooligans, who was being pestered by these hooligans. Seho secretly observed Kim's actions, and she was very pleased that Kim could stand up for those students who could not stand up for themselves. At that moment, Lee was passing by and accidentally saw Seho's sincere smile, and she was a little scared by such a sudden appearance. Lee suggested that Seho go to the buffet together, and Seho became interested in why Soo-hee began to spend less and less time with them. Meanwhile, Sookie worked hard at a sports club to finally get in shape and lose weight. Over the past few days, Sookie began to often come to the sports club and carefully monitor her diet. One day, Kim asked Chan what club he went to, and Chan said that he was going to go to the judo club right now. Then Kim asked Chan to introduce him to the strongest guys from there, but Chan refused him, because he understood that Kim was simply looking for more people with whom he could fight. After this, Chan asked Kim which club he would go to which Kim replied that he was a member of the anime club because all the other clubs seemed too boring to him. When Chan found himself in the corridor, he saw an exhausted and tired Soo-hee, who was not at all like the Soo-hee he knows. John thought about how all his friends and him often spent time together, But at the same time he didn't talk to Suhi very much, since she was the most reserved among them all. Every time John was alone with Suhi, he tried to start some kind of dialogue with Suhi. But every time they both weren't very good at talking to each other. This time, Young decided to take the opportunity to say hello and talk to Suhi, but she didn't pay attention to him. John decided that Suhi simply didn't hear him, and he decides to touch her shoulder with his finger so that she can pay attention to him. However, when Young touched Suhi, she immediately screamed from the pain in her muscles, causing her to be unable to stand on her feet and fall to the floor. At that moment, one of the girls, who also went to judo, came out into the corridor to find out what was happening here. This girl saw Young next to Suhi, and she thought that he used judo techniques to attack Suhi. Young tried to explain that he didn't do anything with Suhi and that he just wanted to talk to her. However, the girl did not understand how Youngwoo managed to kill Suhi if he just wanted to talk to her. A few minutes later, Suhi finally came to her senses and went to the sports club, where Jun was already working out. At that moment, Kabin appeared in front of Suhi, greeted Suhi and told her that today she would have a special workout that would make Suhi's body even more powerful. But Suhi herself only wanted to lose weight. After a few exercises, Suki asked Kabin to take a break for a while as her muscles began to ache again. Kabin was surprised that Suhi got tired so quickly, since they were doing the exercises that Jun had chosen especially for Suhi. Then Suhi realized that she was given exercises for professional athletes instead of a set of exercises for beginners, and Jun just stood on the side and watched Suhi with a smirk on her face. Meanwhile, Kim was relaxing in the office where the anime lovers club was taking place, while the rest of the club members were loudly discussing various new anime and figurines based on them. 2 weeks later, summer began and the air temperature was much higher than usual. That day Lee went to school, and it was very difficult for her to go in such unbearable heat. Despite such intense heat, Lee tried to make every effort to finally reach her class. When Lee finally reached the classroom and opened the door, she felt an incredibly pleasant feeling of freshness. A second later, Kim was behind Lee, who also wasn't feeling very well from the heat. Kim asked Lee to quickly move out of the way so that he could be in the office as quickly as possible. When Lee left, Kim immediately entered the classroom and sat down at his desk, while he did not pay attention to Chan at all. Lee and Chan were not at all happy with the state in which Kim was today. Lee assumed that Kim had started his period, but Jong reminded her that this was impossible since Kim was a guy. In fact, Kim kept thinking about what Lee and Cabin said about how only a coward and a weakling would want to fight a girl, and now his desire to fight Lee became much less. Late in the evening, when school was over, a few kids on the way to the sports club were discussing the time that Young accidentally knocked Soo-hee down, and they thought that Soo-hee didn't tell them anything because she was just being very shy. Do-hyun appeared in front of these guys, with whom Young was discussing the upcoming fight with Kim, and from the guys' clothes, he realized that they studied at the same school where Kim studies. Do-hyun took a drag on his cigarette, and started asking the guys if they knew anything about Kim. In response, the guys in uniform only asked Do-hyun why he was interested in who Kim was. Do-hyun said that it shouldn't concern them why he needed information about Kim, after which he continued asking questions about him. Gradually, the guys began to get annoyed by Do-hyun's stubborn behavior. Then the guys from the sports club said that they knew some things about Kim, but they would not tell him anything about him. However, Do-hyun didn't even get angry and told the guys that it was enough for him that they knew something about Kim, and therefore he just needed to beat this information out of them. After that, Do-hyun immediately kicked one of the guys so hard that he just fell to the ground. After a couple of seconds, Do-hyun managed to throw the rest of the guys from the sports club to the ground. Then Do-hyun grabbed one of the guys and told him that if he didn't tell him about Kim right now, he would beat him to death. However, the guy from the sports club said that he lied to him about knowing something about Kim, and then Do-hyun demanded the name of anyone else who might know something about Kim. Even despite his not very fortunate position, the guy from the sports department did not answer this question. When Kim was still very young, he loved to spend all his free time with his high school friend Lee Hyun-sung. One day, while Kim was again having fun with his brother on the swing, he noticed that his brother's phone was ringing very often. Hyun-sung said he didn't have to answer the call. Then Kim said that if Hyun-sung gets calls so often, then it could be a very important call. Then Hyun-sung stopped pushing Kim on the swing and said that this was indeed a very important call. After that, Hyun-sung took out his phone from his pocket and answered the call, while Kim's swing began to swing more and more quietly. After the call, Hyunsung was about to leave somewhere, and told Kim that he had urgent matters to attend to. In fact, Kim was sitting on his desk and thinking about Hyunsung, who, unfortunately, had been dead for a long time. After a couple of minutes, Kim felt someone poking him with a finger to wake him up. When Kim stood up, he saw that Lee was pointing her finger at him, who told him that he was being asked to come into the teacher's room. When Kim asked Lee what the teacher wanted from him, Lee said that she did not know, and she suspected that Kim had done something wrong again. Before leaving the office, Kim pushed Lee with his shoulder, after which he headed towards the staff room. A couple of minutes later, Kim was already in the teacher's room, and there one of the teachers began to scold Kim. The teacher was dissatisfied with the fact that in one of the exams Kim put the first answer options in all questions, to which Kim said that that day he was very sleepy and could not concentrate properly on the exam. At this point, another teacher said that at this age, guys like Kim often watch erotic videos on the internet, after which he told Kim that if he watches such videos too often, sooner or later he will simply rub his calluses. Then Kim said that if the teacher had nothing more to say, he would go, but the teacher wanted to say a few more words to Kim. The teacher also told Kim that if he did something like that again in the exam, he would be in very bad shape. The teacher also said that he knows very well that Kim fights very often, since a lot of guys talk about it, but Kim no longer paid much attention to the teacher's words. Meanwhile, not far from Kim, another teacher asked Jaehyun to call those students who were supposed to stay after school yesterday. This teacher also told Jaehyun that if he doesn't watch his classmates, they will become like Kim, to which Jaehyun said that nothing like that will happen in his class. After that, Jaehyun went to his class and passing by Kim, he pushed him on the shoulder, which surprised Kim very much. The teacher who was talking to Kim thought that he had pushed Jaehyun on the shoulder, after which he began to loudly shout at him. However, Kim immediately began to tell the teacher that it was Jaehyun who dared to push him. However, the teacher did not believe that such a decent student as Jaehyun could hit another student with his shoulder right in front of the teacher. The teacher also told Kim that if he still wanted to fight with the rest of the students, then let him do it only after the exams, after which Kim left the teacher's room and headed back to his class. School ended, evening came, and Kim returned home to his sister. Entering the house, Kim first saw how his older sister decided to get drunk again, but his sister said that even so she would live much longer than Kim. Kim decided that it was too late to somehow try to stop his sister, and he decided to just take some snacks from the table. Unexpectedly for Kim, his sister asked him when he would finally come to his senses and stop waving his fists. Also, Kim's older sister told him that time would fly by, and that very soon Kim would become an adult. Kim's older sister also told him that he should live his life, despite the past. Kim remembered that whenever his sister gets drunk, she always brings up the topic, and Kim told her that they had already discussed this many times, and that they agreed not to bring it up again. After that, Kim went to his room, lay down on the bed and thought that he could no longer live like this, and that very soon he simply could not stand it all and would go crazy. A few days later, the exams ended and Lee was very happy about it, so he decided to ask her if she did well in all the exams. However, instead of answering, Lee lashed out at Soo-hee and told her that she was completely rude for being interested in such things, which scared Soo-hee very much, suggesting that she couldn't do well on all the exams. After that, Lee saw Kim and asked him if he managed to pass the exams, to which Kim only asked Lee not to talk to him. At that moment, Soo-hee looked at Lee and thought that just a couple of seconds ago she attacked her because she wanted to know how she passed the exams. When Kim and his friends left the school, they noticed a guy on its territory who, judging by his uniform, did not even study there. It turned out to be Do-hyun, who was standing outside the school with a cigarette in his mouth and waiting for Kim to appear. When Do-hyun saw Kim's mole under his eye, piercings, and blonde hair, he threw away his cigarette and walked towards Kim. When Kim noticed Do-hyun walking towards him, he decided to ask him who he even was. However, instead of answering, Do-hyun only quickened his pace, and when he was half a meter away from Kim, he was about to kick him. However, despite such an unexpected attack, Kim manages to dodge Do-hyun's attack. Kim's friends were surprised not only by how suddenly Do-hyun attacked Kim, but also by how Kim managed to react and remain unharmed. Do-hyun looked at Kim and said that he was as agile as he was told. Kim turned to Do-hyun and asked him who he was and what he needed from him. Do-hyun then introduced himself to Kim and told him that he wanted to fight him to see what Kim was capable of in a fight. However, Kim said that he was not in the mood and that he did not want to fight today. Do-hyun thought that Kim's desire to fight someone was not at all what he was told, and he told Kim that he wanted to fight him one-on-one, to which Kim told Do-hyun to find another opponent. Then Do-hyun told Kim that he was exactly the same weakling as his friend Lee Hyun-sung was. Then Kim was very deeply touched by Do-hyun's words, after which he stopped and asked him how he knew Hyun-sung and that they were friends together. Do-hyun said that he heard that at school Hyun-sung was an outcast and no one talked to him, and his only friend was little Kim. Do-hyun also said that Hyun-sung not only couldn't stand up for himself or others, but he also couldn't ask others for help, which made him the biggest weakling and outcast in school. Do-hyun also said that at one time Hyun-sung could not do anything except constantly run away from his problems, and in the end he could not do anything except commit suicide. Kim was beside himself about how this freak knew him, and how he knew about what happened to Hyun-sung. Lee saw how Kim started to get angrier with Do-hyun every second, and she decided to grab Do-hyun's hand. Lee immediately told Do-hyun to apologize to Kim right now for everything he just said to him. Do-hyun, not understanding what Lee was doing, told her not to get involved in someone else's conversation, after which he demanded that she let him go. Lee decided not to let go of Do-hyun, and then he tried to escape from her grip, but Lee's grip was too strong to simply break free. At that moment, Yang appeared and told Do-hyun not to make unnecessary noise on the school grounds. Yang immediately became angry when he saw Lee next to Do-hyun, who, upon seeing him, shouted about him that he liked to wear women's clothes. Do-hyun told Yang that he only came here to simply challenge Kim to fight, to which Yang said that anything related to their fight should take place outside the school grounds. Do-hyun was very annoyed that Yang was constantly ordering him around, and he reminded Yang that his time of dominating the bullies at this school was long past, and that he was no longer a boss to anyone. Do-hyun also said that Yang lost that battle with Kim because he pretended to be an exemplary student, which is why over time his body was no longer so strong. Do-hyun also told Yang that he really doesn't like it when those who are much weaker than him try to dictate to him. Suddenly Kim handed a small piece of paper between Do-hyun and Yang, on which Kim wrote his phone number. Kim told Do-hyun to send him a message indicating the location and time of the fight. Kim also told Do-hyun that since he wanted it so badly, he was ready to beat Do-hyun to death. Do-hyun snatched the piece of paper with Kim's number from his hands and said that this was the best solution for both of them. Do-hyun said that he could fight Kim right then and there, but he sees that Kim is at his best right now. Do-hyun got ready to leave and told Kim that he was coming tomorrow to the place that he would indicate to him in the message. When Do-hyun was out of sight, Kim asked Lee why she got involved in their conversation. Lee said the man was saying bad things to Kim, and she wanted to intervene in the conversation to teach him a lesson. However, Kim said that this had nothing to do with Lee and that she should not have interfered. Lee was shocked by Kim's behavior, since she had never seen Kim in such a state in her life. Jae-hyun told Kim that Lee just wanted to stand up for him and that's why she took his side, to which Kim replied that he didn't ask anyone to help him in this situation, after which Kim went home. On the way home, Kim thought about how Do-hyun found out about Hyun-sung and who he could have gotten this information from. At first, Kim thought that Young Si-hyun told Do-hyun, since he was one of the few people who knew about everything. But Kim thought that Young would never tell about it, especially to a stranger. Then Kim decides that tomorrow he will personally ask Do-hyun how he knew about Hyun-sung and everything else that he told him. The next day, Kim came to the meeting place with Do-hyun at the specific time he indicated in the message. Then Kim decides to immediately ask Do-hyun how he knows about him and Hyun-sung. Instead of answering the question, Dong-hyun said that he would answer Kim's question if he managed to defeat him, and Kim agreed to these terms. Before starting to fight, Kim decided to take off his shirt so as not to get it dirty during the fight. Immediately after that, Kim threw his shirt towards Do-hyun, knocking him off and diverting his attention. When Do-hyun threw Kim's shirt away from him, Kim at that very second manages to kick Do-hyun in the side. From such an unexpected blow, Do-hyun fell to the floor and placed his hand on the site of the blow. In less than a second, Kim was ready to punch Do-hyun in the stomach again as hard as he could. However, Do-hyun manages to block the blow with his hand in order to at least slightly contain the force of Kim's blow. However, despite this attempt at defense, Dong-hyun still failed to withstand the full blow, which is why Kim throws him into one of the walls. Kim wanted to take advantage of the moment and have time to hit Do-hyun again, but this time Do-hyun managed to avoid the blow. When Do-hyun dodged Kim's punch, He immediately decided to punch Kim in the face as hard as possible. After the punch, Do-hyun told Kim that he really was as crazy in the fight as he was told. Kim looked at Do-hyun and told him that he was already feeling very irritated lately. After that, Kim became even more angry with Do-hyun, and he stopped sparing his strength and started hitting Do-hyun as hard as he could. During the fight, Do-hyun remembered his recent conversation with Yang, in which he asked him who he thought would win this fight. That time, Yang told Do-hyun that he couldn't tell him exactly which of them would win, but he knew for sure that Kim was very dangerous when he was angry. Yang told Do-hyun that day when he fought Kim that he would definitely defeat Kim, but at one point he just wanted not to lose. That day was the first time Yang saw such tenacity and desire from Kim to defeat his opponent. At that moment Yang, despite his desire to emerge victorious, experienced such a strong feeling of fear that he had not experienced before. At one point, Do-hyun suddenly started laughing despite the numerous wounds he received during the fight. Kim didn't understand why Do-hyun was laughing, and Do-hyun told him that he had a lot of fun fighting an opponent like Kim. Afterwards, Do-hyun told Kim that they should continue fighting, after which he called Kim a yellow-haired anchovy. Meanwhile, Lee was upset with Kim for not appreciating her help with Do-hyun. Lee was very angry that instead of thanking her, Kim told her not to interfere in their conversation, which made her very upset. To release all her pent-up anger, Lee hit the nearest wall with all her might, causing the wall to begin to crack. All this was observed by Chan, who wanted to call Lee to talk to her about Kim. Chan chose a local coffee shop as the place to talk, where he ordered 2 cups of Americano for himself and Lee. Jong took the order and told Lee that if she didn't want an Americano, she could order something else, but Lee said it was okay since she liked iced Americano. When Lee started drinking her Americano, Jong noticed that she didn't really like it, even though she had just said that she liked Americano, to which Lee said that she had never tried it. When Jong sat down at the table, he took his glass of Americano and told Lee that he wanted to tell her a story that was very closely related to Kim. Meanwhile, Kim and Do-hyun continued to fight each other and leave new bruises and wounds on each other. Kim could still continue to beat Do-hyun, while Do-hyun himself was already having difficulty dodging Kim's attacks and inflicting new blows. After a few blows, Do-hyun looked at Kim and realized that he didn't seem to be tired during the entire fight. After a few hard blows, Do-hyun stretched his hand and reminded Kim that if he beats him, he will tell him how he knows that idiot and loser Hyun-seong. Kim, trying to contain all his anger, told Do-hyun not to call him an idiot and a loser. Hearing this, Do-hyun suggested that Kim call Hyun-seong a trash instead of an idiot and a loser. Unable to contain his inner anger, Kim immediately ran towards Do-hyun and prepared to hit him right in the face. However, Do-hyun not only manages not to take damage from Kim, but also grabs his arm and even hits him in the nose with his elbow. While Kim flew to the side from a strong blow, Do-hyun thought that he had been missing out on an opponent in a fight without rules for a long time. Do-hyun loved the way his opponent's fresh blood flowed straight onto the ground and left large marks on it. However, the most pleasant thing for Do-hyun was the feeling of winning a fight without rules, where he could give his all while his opponent trembled in pain and fear. At this point, Do-hyun moved closer to Kim and told him to get to his feet as soon as possible to continue their fight. Do-hyun also told Kim to be as vigilant as possible, since from now on Do-hyun will stop feeling sorry for him. At the same time, Do-hyun looked at Kim and thought about how he could quench his thirst for battle by fighting Kim. Throughout his childhood, Kim grew up without a mother, and his father worked very hard and was rarely at home. Kim also had an older sister, but at this time she began her teenage period, and instead of spending time with her younger brother, she constantly talked to her friends on the phone. However, Kim still had a best friend, Hyun-seong, with whom they spent a lot of time together. Even though Kim and Hyun-seong were not blood brothers, Hyun-seong always cared about Kim and Kim considered him the person closest to him. However, Kim's life changed greatly when he learned that Hyun-seong had passed away at one point. Hyun-seong's death was a bunch of hooligans who had been bullying Hyun-seong for a very long time. One day, these bullies again bullied Hyun-seong on the edge of a high cliff, and at one point, Hyun-seong accidentally fell off the edge of the cliff and fell down from a great height. After this incident, Kim with all his soul hated those freaks, because of whom the person closest and dearest to Kim died. From that moment on, every time Kim saw bullies who bullied those weaker than them, He thought about what he should do so that he would never see these scum again. The only correct solution that Kim saw was to beat up such hooligans, since this was the most effective solution. From that moment on, Kim only thought that he could never ignore such actions, and he had to become strong enough so that no one else could resist him. Many years have passed since then, and Kim has indeed become strong enough to stand up to almost any bully without any serious effort. Kim was absolutely confident that he could fight back against bullies because he had become strong and intimidating. However, this time it was very difficult for Kim to damage Do-hyun and withstand his attacks. After the blow, Do-hyun sarcastically suggested that Kim take a break so that Kim could recover from his blows. However, Kim interrupted Do-hyun and said that he could easily withstand such weak blows from Do-hyun. In response, Do-hyun told Kim that he actually wouldn't stop the fight in the sweet spot. After that, Kim and Do-hyun continued to fight against each other, and Kim was very surprised by how Do-hyun did not get tired during the fight. What amazed Kim even more was that no matter how strong his blows were, Do-hyun was able to withstand almost any of his attacks. Do-hyun faster and harder, but he didn't care, as if he had just been hit with a feather. Then Kim believed that in reality Do-hyun was just pretending that he didn't care about his blows, and in fact he was barely holding back the pain. At one point, Kim was frightened by the fact that Do-hyun, instead of twisting his face in pain, simply took the blows and smiled at the same time. At one point, Kim was distracted by fear, and Do-hyun decided to take advantage of this and hit Kim. While Kim was dodging Do-hyun's punches, he was trying to understand why Do-hyun was smiling during the fight. Kim was also very surprised by how Do-hyun managed to run to him so quickly and strike him so quickly. Do-hyun actually took great pleasure in fighting, and he was ready to dedicate his entire life to endless fights with people like Kim. Kim also thought that Do-hyun was the kind of person that no one looks down on. Until this moment, Kim considered himself a man who always strived for eternal battles and trials of fate. But now he strongly doubted that he would be able to defeat Do-hyun. After several blows from Do-hyun, Kim could no longer stand on his feet, and due to lack of strength, he fell to the ground. After that, Do-hyun approached the prone Kim and told him that if he did not get up, continue the fight and defeat him, then Do-hyun would not be able to tell him from whom he learned about Kim's past. Without waiting for Kim to get to his feet, Do-hyun grabbed him by the clothes and lifted Kim in front of him. Seeing the unhealthy expression on Do-hyun's face, Kim thought that this was not a person, but a real monster. At one point, Kim became so scared that for a moment it seemed to him that he could not see or hear anything at all. At this moment, Do-hyun struck Kim with a strong blow, but Kim managed to absorb the enemy's attack. After the blow, Kim experienced unbearable pain in his hands, which he had probably never felt before, from which he wanted to scream, but at the same time he managed to hold back the pain. During Do-hyun's next attack, Kim thought that until that moment he considered himself the strongest and invincible person. Even though he still considers himself strong, he thought that he was not strong enough to defeat Do-hyun. This time, Do-hyun's blow was so strong that Kim could no longer hold back the pain, and at one point he even cried a little from such pain. Do-hyun wanted to hit Kim with kicks, but Kim managed to dodge his blow and avoid another portion of pain. After dodging, Kim realized that Do-hyun had the same weapon as him, but Do-hyun's techniques were more lethal and less forgiving. After failing to damage Kim, Do-hyun stopped and told Kim that he was enjoying the fight right now. Do-hyun told Kim that their fight today was destined, and that Kim, like no one else, knows this thirst for a fight. Do-hyun also said that Kim also experiences this sense of risk when his own life is at stake. And before that Do-hyun thought that there were no people left in the world with whom he could measure strength. However, today Do-hyun fought with Kim, in a fight against whom he felt that same feeling of risk and fight for his life. Do-hyun also told the exhausted Kim that he was exactly the same monster as himself. After that, Do-hyun tuned in and wanted to continue fighting with Kim until one of them died. Kim could barely stand on his feet and remembered Yang's words that Kim was a monster, and he believed that Yang saw in him the same person as in Do-hyun. While Do-hyun walked closer and closer towards Kim, Kim began to think that he was not at all like the other hooligans. However, Kim was still tormented by the thought of why he felt the same desire to fight as the other hooligans. Kim was especially tormented by the thought of why he wanted to fight Lee, while she was not a bad girl at all. Kim then felt that he had a better reason to fight other bullies than Do-hyun. While Kim was completely lost in thoughts, Do-hyun hit Kim in the face with all his might. Soon the rain stopped, and even though Kim could still stand, he didn't even try to stand in front of Do-hyun and hit him back. Do-hyun tried to understand what Kim was up to, but Kim himself no longer listened to Do-hyun and continued to kneel in front of him. Then Do-hyun felt that he had completely broken Kim's fighting spirit, and he decided to once again remind him of what would happen if Kim defeated him. Do-hyun still did not stop provoking Kim to continue the fight, calling him and Hyunsung weaklings, but Kim still did not succumb to such provocations. Afterwards, Kim told Do-hyun that he had lost their fight today and that he didn't want to fight anymore, which only made Do-hyun angrier. An enraged Do-hyun grabbed Kim and told him that he couldn't give up so easily as he was still capable of continuing the fight. Do-hyun also continued to provoke Kim and tell him that he is a monster like himself. Do-hyun then told Kim that as long as they were both alive, the fight would not end, and so he demanded that Kim continue the fight now. However, Kim did not react in any way to Do-hyun's screams and still did not try to overcome Do-hyun. At this moment, Do-hyun felt uneasy looking at Kim's broken spirit, and he decides to finish him off in this state. However, just as Do-hyun was about to strike, someone behind him grabbed his arm and prevented him from hitting Kim. The mysterious hooded man said that he was already tired of watching Kim get more and more seriously injured with each new fight. This person turned out to be Lee, who came here to protect Kim from certain death. Lee told Kim that if he didn't come home, his sister would be very worried about him. However, Do-hyun interrupted Lee and told her that the fight couldn't end so easily since they had just started. Lee said she didn't care at all about it, and didn't care that he didn't want the fight to end that easily or that quickly. Lee threw her umbrella on the ground and said that she was ready to fight Do-hyun instead of Kim, and if he lost, he would ask Kim for forgiveness and never pester them again. Kim was not happy with this turn of events, but Do-hyun was not against it, and he said that if she loses, she will step aside and watch him finish off Kim. While Do-hyun was speaking, he immediately rushed towards Lee to attack her as quickly as possible. However, as soon as Do-hyun reached Lee, she suddenly raised her leg up and hit Do-hyun in the jaw. Kim was shocked at how Lee was able to defeat Do-hyun so easily with just one blow. Lee's blow was so strong that Do-hyun lost consciousness after the blow and fell to the ground. After the hit, Lee said it was time for them both to go home, after which a shoe fell on her head and was knocked off during the hit. Kim could not believe that Lee was able to defeat Do-hyun so easily, and he believed that after Do-hyun's numerous blows, he was seeing strong hallucinations in front of him. After that, Lee took off her wet jacket, as she was afraid that it might make her sick. Kim said that in fact Lee was a real monster, and Lee started yelling at Kim for calling her names instead of thanking her. While Lee screamed at Kim more and more loudly, Kim tried to calm her down and warn her about the danger behind. However, Lee did not listen to Kim, which is why Do-hyun came to his senses, grabbed Lee by the head and slammed her head into the asphalt. Do-hyun laughed loudly and hysterically, and said that Lee was just crazy and that for a moment he thought he was going to die. After that, Do-hyun told Lee to attack him, which surprised Kim greatly. Kim then told Do-hyun that he would not fight Lee since he originally wanted to fight him. However, Do-hyun told Kim that not only had he lost interest in fighting him, but Kim himself had said a minute ago that he no longer wanted to fight. After that, Do-hyun looked at Kim and told him that he had no intention of fighting another weakling from high school. At that moment, Lee did not understand how Do-hyun could survive her blow, after which she told Do-hyun that after the fight, he would also have to apologize to Kim for the words that he had just said to him. After that, Lee stood up and concentrated all her strength and thoughts on the fact that she must defeat Do-hyun at any cost. When Do-hyun approached Lee, she immediately prepared to kick Do-hyun in the head again, but he managed to react and deflect Lee's attack. Besides, Do-hyun was also able to grab Lee's leg and prepare to kick her. To free herself from the grip, Lee jumped up with her other leg and hit Do-hyun with it, after which she freed herself from his grip. As soon as Lee was on the ground, Do-hyun ran up to her and tried to headbutt her. Do-hyun's headbutt was so strong that Do-hyun managed to knock Lee down with this blow. Lee really didn't like the fact that Do-hyun was so resistant and impenetrable to her attacks. Lee was soon able to get back to her feet, at which point Do-hyun prepared to attack her again. Even though Do-hyun failed to hit Lee with his fist, he punched the wall and managed to push her into a corner. However, this time Lee was not at a loss and manages to grab Do-hyun's shoulder. Do-hyun's shoulder, she jumped up and kicked Do-hyun in the ribs as she jumped. Meanwhile, Kim looked at this fight and thought that this simply could not be possible. Despite the intense pain from Lee's blow, Do-hyun manages to grab onto Lee, and it seems to her that he wants to knee her in the face. However, instead of kicking Lee, Do-hyun raised his leg higher and rested it on Lee's shoulder. After such a move, Lee cannot bear Do-hyun's weight and falls to his knees, while Do-hyun squeezes his legs and wraps them around Lee's head. Lee told Do-hyun that she had no intention of losing to him, and that she would get Do-hyun to apologize to Kim by any means necessary. Lee was surprised by Do-hyun's tenacity and desire not to lose, and she believed that he was trying to win only so that he would not apologize to Kim later. However, Do-hyun said that if he loses, then he should no longer appear in front of her eyes. But he really wanted to fight Lee a bunch more times, since there are no more tough fighters in the world like her. Kim watched the fight from the side and at the same time was very worried about Lee, and he shouted to her that she should break free from Do-hyun's grip as soon as possible. Do-hyun squeezed Lee's head more and more every second, and he did not stop talking about how victory in this fight would be his. Lee tried her best to get to her feet with Do-hyun heavy around her neck, and she succeeded. Do-hyun was a little surprised at Lee's strength, and thought that this girl was definitely crazy. After Lee was able to get to her feet, she immediately tried to accelerate as quickly as possible and run towards one of the walls, in order to completely neutralize Do-hyun. Once Lee had a good speed, she didn't stop in front of the wall, and she accelerated so much that she ran right through the wall and left a hole in it, causing Do-hyun to pass out. As Lee and Do-hyun ran through the wall, Kim approached the destroyed wall to see if Lee was okay. Lee rose to her feet and clutched her head due to the slight pain in her head from breaking through the wall. After that, Lee said that after such a collision, Do-hyun was unlikely to be able to get back on his feet, and that it was time for him and Kim to return home. As Lee sat with Young reminded her that Kim had recently been rude to her, to which Lee said that she was very angry with him, and that she would never help Kim again. Jong then agreed with Lee and said that Kim can be so rude sometimes. However, Chan immediately reminded Lee that Kim had a very difficult childhood, and that in fact he was a person with a very deep and kind soul who was just a little unlucky in this life. Chong also told Lee that Kim now needs a person who can become a good support for him, and he said that this person at the moment is Lee. Lee didn't understand a little what Chan was telling her, and she asked him why he was so sure of this. Jong said that Kim doesn't have many friends since most people are just afraid of him, and only Lee was able to get so close to Kim that after some time they became very friendly with each other. Jong also said that every time he saw Kim with Lee, he was once again convinced that their relationship was different. In addition, Young reminded Lee how she came out in front of Do-hyun to stand up for Kim. Finally, Chan asked Lee to become a support for Kim, because now he needs a person who can be relied on in difficult times. Meanwhile, Ian was sitting in the city library with a bunch of books and preparing for exams. Soon, a small piece of paper fell on the table next to Jan, with which someone wanted to attract his attention. However, Yang decided not to pay attention to this piece of paper and threw it away from him. A couple of seconds later, several more pieces of paper with various slightly offensive inscriptions fell onto Ian's table. At one point, Yang couldn't stand it, and decided to find out who was throwing these pieces of paper, and it turned out to be Lee. Lee said that she urgently needed to talk to Yang, and that in order to do this they needed to leave the library for a while. Lee was a little confused by the fact that instead of studying at night, Yang specifically went to the library, to which Yang told her that the teachers were very pleased with his desire to study, and therefore he should continue to put an effort in his studies. Yang wondered how Lee knew he was here, and Lee said that she asked the bullies who were in the same class as Yang. After this, Lee told Yang that she had to stop Kim and Do-hyun's fight by any means, after which she asked Yang where they agreed to hold the fight. Yang said that there was no need for this, since he believed that people like Kim could only reform if they were beaten a little. Yang also said that this fight could be a good opportunity to calm down and teach Kim a lesson. Then Lee said that in this case, she herself would defeat Do-hyun and take care of raising Kim if Yang told her the place of the fight. At first, Yang didn't understand how Lee was going to fight Do-hyun, but almost immediately he remembered how in his fight with Kim she was able to break through an entire concrete wall. After the fight with Do-hyun, Lee told Kim that it was time for both of them to go home. Kim asked Lee why she had come to help out a scumbag like him, and Lee thought Kim had hit his head hard for him to say such things to himself. Kim reminded Lee of the time she asked him that he wanted to fight her, and Kim admitted that he actually wanted to fight her. Kim told Lee that for him there is nothing more fascinating than a fight with a strong person. Kim also said that he initially started fighting because he did not want to see how bullies bully the weak, since because of such bullies he lost someone very close to him. Kim believed that he fought purely for the sake of goodness, but only now he noticed how many people saw him as the same bully. Kim immediately began to cry and said that now he also sees himself as the same bully he used to fight against. Lee couldn't bear to see Kim beating herself up, and she told Kim that she didn't think he was a bad person at all. Kim then reminded Lee once again that he wanted to fight her, and Lee said that she still thought Kim was a bad person. Lee told Kim that if he or anyone else thought he was a bad person, he still knew how kind and sincere a person Kim could truly be. Lee said that at first she also thought Kim was crazy when he constantly followed her and stalked her. However, over time, Lee realized that Kim is actually a very friendly guy who always lends a helping hand to those who need help. Lee also said that Kim is a very kind guy with a sense of justice, who only at first glance looks like some kind of hooligan or slacker. Finally, Lee said that everyone can make mistakes, and that you just need to remember about them and follow the right path. Then Lee said that Kim should live a happy life, and when, many years later, he saw that very person dear to him again, he could tell him about his happy memories. Lee told Kim that she was ready to become his support so that Kim would never be sad again and live a happy life. Kim didn't fully understand why Lee was trying so hard for him, and he decided to ask her about it. Lee replied to Kim that friends should always help and support each other in any situation. Kim looked at Lee and thought about how strong she was, both in body and soul, and that he wanted to become as strong as Lee. A few minutes later, Kim returned home, where his slightly angry older sister was already waiting for him. Kim's older sister was about to scold her younger brother for walking along the street at night again, but her sister was very surprised when she saw that Kim did not come home alone. It turned out Kim came home with Lee, who kept her eyes closed because she didn't want to see the code to Kim's apartment. As soon as Kim arrived home, the first thing Kim did was apologize to his older sister for coming so late and making her worry about him. Kim's older sister, with a frightened look, asked Kim who was with him, to which Kim said that he had come with a friend. Kim's older sister greeted Kim's friend as politely as possible, as if she were greeting an adult, to which Kim said that Lee was younger than her, and that she did not need to be so polite. Then Kim and Lee turned back and saw Hanbyul standing behind them. Hanbyul suddenly appeared behind them. After finding his older sister, Hanbyul told Lee that he had been looking for her for a long time, and finally he succeeded. Lee was so scared that she hit her little brother in the face out of fear. Feeling ashamed, Lee grabbed Hanbyul, said goodbye to Kim, and ran home as quickly as possible. While Lee and Hanbyul were talking outside the door, Kim's older sister asked her brother if it was really his friend, to which Kim replied that they were indeed friends with Lee. Returning home, Lee's father punished his daughter again and forced her to kneel with her hands up. Lee's father wanted to ask his daughter why she returned home so late, to which Lee said that she was out with Suhi. However, Hanbyul immediately interrupted his sister and told his father that he saw her again with Kim, and this brother's act irritated Lee very much. Then Lee's father asked Hanbyul and his wife if Lee had acted well in such a situation, to which everyone unanimously replied that Lee had acted very badly. Then the entire Lee family felt that Lee deserved a special punishment, and this frightened Lee herself very much, since she did not at all understand what kind of punishment Lee was expecting. After that, Lee was given rubber gloves and liquid soap, and she still didn't understand what awaits her. As it turned out later, as punishment, Lee had to take care of Roni all day. Previously, Lee's mother and father, along with Hanbyul, took care of Roni every day, and they were very happy that today Lee would take care of all the care. Before this, Lee's mother was responsible for keeping Roni clean, so she washed Roni every day. In addition to bathing, Roni also needed to cut his nails and brush his teeth, which was usually done by Father Lee. Feeding Roni was also equally important, and Hanbyul fed Roni every day cat food with various nutritional supplements for professional athletes. Lee's family reminded her that from the moment she brought Roni home, she had never cared for him. Also, Lee's family told her that since then, Roni has become a full-fledged member of the family, and today Lee must take care of him all day. Lee told Hanbyul that she would remember this to him, but Hanbyul no longer listened to his sister, closed the door, and left his older sister in the same room with Roni. Lee felt that she simply had no choice but to accept her punishment, and take care of Roni all day. The first thing Lee was going to do was wash Roni, but he was already preparing to run away from Lee. Then Roni began to try to escape, but Lee barely managed to grab him and hold him in his hands so that he would not run away. Without stopping his attempts to escape from Lee, Roni began to scratch her so that she would let him go. After a few seconds, Roni managed to escape from Lee's arms and run out of her room, and Lee immediately began to catch him. Lee asked Hanbil to help her with Roni, but Hanbil did not listen to his older sister at all and continued to watch cartoons. Lee was very angry that Hanbil was deliberately not paying any attention to her, and she decided to hit him in the face with her knee so that he would finally take his mind off the cartoons and help her. At one point, Roni hid in the corner, and Lee decides to take this opportunity and catch Roni. While Lee tried to catch Roni and asked her little brother for help, Hanbil just watched what was happening and laughed at his sister. Then Lee decided to hit Hanbil again, and in the end Hanbil agrees to help her older sister with Roni. While Lee washed Roni, Hanbil with a beaten face held Roni so that he would not accidentally run away while washing. After a few minutes, Lee was finally able to wash Roni, and after washing, he was perfectly clean. However, Lee found it very difficult to wash Roni, and after washing Roni, she immediately fell to the floor due to extreme fatigue. Lee raised her head, looked at the clean Roni and wondered if this cat understood how hard it was for her to wash him. Lee closed her eyes and felt bad for not understanding how difficult it was for her family to care for Roni. At that moment, her family approached Lee and reminded her that in addition to washing Lee, she needed to trim Roni's nails, brush his teeth and feed him. Lee was afraid to imagine how difficult the rest of the cases connected with Roni would be. Last night, when Lee and Hanbil went home, Kim apologized to his older sister and told her that from now on, he will no longer fight and will begin to study well. Kim's older sister did not understand what happened to Kim and why he suddenly decided to change so dramatically, to which Kim told his sister that nothing had happened and that he just wanted to become a better person. After that, Kim went into his room, sat on the bed and thought that it was high time for him to put an end to his antics. Kim still couldn't forget Lee's words that she was ready to become his life support. Kim felt good in his heart from the realization that despite all his antics, Lee still sees him as a good person. The next morning, Kim woke up at 8 a.m. in order to quickly change his life for the better and get some things done. As soon as Kim woke up, the first thing he did was to clean up the house a little. After Kim cleaned the entire house, he decided to water some house plants. Kim's older sister was very surprised that her younger brother decided to change so dramatically. Kim didn't understand why his older sister was unhappy with his decision to change for the better. Kim's older sister said that she had some plans for the evening, and she asked Kim to handle dinner himself. When Kim asked his sister who she decided to date, her sister said that she wanted to spend time with Kang Seoyoung, whom Kim simply hated. As Kim's older sister prepared to leave, Kim told her not to bring Kang home under any circumstances. Kim's older sister promised that she would not bring Kang home so as not to irritate Kim once again. However, in the late afternoon, Kim's older sister returned home with Kang, who was already intoxicated. Also, Kim's older sister told Kang that Kim couldn't stand her, for which Kang called Kim a brat. Kim was disappointed when he found out that Kang would be staying at their house for the night today. Kang Seoyoung was best friends with Kim's older sister, whom she had been friends with since middle school. In addition, Kim constantly disliked Kang for a variety of reasons. Previously, when Kim was 12 years old, Kang constantly treated Kim like a little boy. At the age of 15, Kim decided to dye his hair blonde for the first time. Kang immediately made fun of Kim and said that Kim's blonde hair color didn't suit him at all when she first saw him in this new look. Kim was especially annoyed when Kang said that this hair color was very similar to her hair color, and she said that Kim specially made such a paired hair color. While Kim was sitting in his room at the computer, Kang burst into his room and wanted to borrow his clothes. Kang said that Kim's older sister's clothes were too small for Kang, and she thought that Kim could give her his own clothes. Kim handed Kang his t-shirt and told her to leave her room as soon as possible. Kim was embarrassed that Kang decided to change clothes right in front of him, which Kang herself did not pay much attention to. Kang said that since she has almost a family relationship with Kim, he shouldn't be so embarrassed. Kim thought it was time for him to use force, but at the same time he tried to restrain his emotions. As soon as Kang changed clothes, she immediately lay down on Kim's bed, which Kim himself did not like very much. Kang lay down on Kim's bed, turned to him and said that she was very sorry that Kim had changed so much, since she thought that Kim used to be a very sweet and good boy. With every second, Kim wanted to use force more and more, and also with every second it became more and more difficult for him to restrain his anger. However, at one point, Kang said that she did not come here only to ask Kim for clothes. Kang told Kim that she learned from his older sister that Kim had decided to make a big change for the better. Kang said she still didn't understand the reason for the drastic change, but she was glad that Kim decided to become a better person. Kang also told Kim that every time she went out with his older sister, she always talked about Kim, which Kim himself was somewhat ashamed of. Kang continued to look at Kim and told him that she now thought Kim seemed calmer and more reasonable. However, Kang said that she was somewhat frightened by such drastic changes in Kim, and she thought that Kim had joined some kind of sect, to which Kim told her that she was just drunk and talking about some kind of nonsense. Kim told Kang that once he entered high school, he met a very nice person there who he ended up becoming friends with, and he wants to become a strong person like his friend. Kim also added that he wants to become as strong as his new friend, not only in body, but also in soul, in order to be the same reliable support for his family. Kang was very happy for Kim and felt that Kim was finally starting to mature. After that, Kang got up from Kim's bed and told him that he should treat this friend well, and that Kim should definitely treat this friend with something, after which Kang went to bed. As soon as Kang left the room, Kim felt that he had never really thanked Lee for saving him. The next day, Kim went to school, hoping that he would meet Lee there again. As soon as Kim entered the classroom, he saw Lee, who was not in the best condition. Kim approached Lee and addressed her as a master, explaining that he would take her as an example as his teacher, to which Lee told him that there was no need for this, since it greatly embarrassed her. When Kim wanted to ask Lee what was wrong with her, Lee told Kim that she was very hot, and that she could not stand the heat very well, and she really wanted to eat something tasty and cold. Then Kim suggested that Lee go together after class and eat a portion of cold ice cream. Kim told Lee that he never thanked Lee properly, so he wanted to thank her by buying her some ice cream. Lee was once again uncomfortable with Kim calling her master again. Lee immediately punched Kim in the stomach and told him not to address her as master anymore. On the same day, all the students at Junseo's school were already talking about how Kim got into a fight with Do-hyun. Kim got very angry when someone said that some fool intervened in the fight between Kim and Do-hyun and stopped them. After that, Kim turned to Lee again as a master and asked her which ice cream she wanted to choose. Lee felt very embarrassed that Kim called her master in front of all the students. Out of awkwardness, Lee immediately grabbed Kim by the hand and led him out of the cafe. Kinso school students did not understand what kind of situation had just happened between Kim and Lee. When Kim and Lee were on the roof of the school, Kim asked Lee what just happened, and Lee asked Kim the same question. Lee told Kim that if he, as the leader of the school, called her master in front of other students, it would cause unnecessary attention to her. Kim said that he respects Lee very much, and that's why he calls her master, while Lee thought that now Kim annoys her even more than before. After this, Lee turned to Kim and told him that since she was only 16 years old, the title of master was somewhat burdensome for her. Therefore, as an alternative, Lee suggested that Kim begin a secret apprentice-master relationship. Kim did not fully understand what other secret relationship between student and master Lee was now telling him about. Lee told Kim that if he agreed to have a secret student-student relationship with her, then she would train Kim. Kim told Lee that if that was her wish, then he agreed to have a secret student-student relationship with her. When school ended, Kim called Lee master again and suggested they go eat ice cream together. Lee immediately started yelling at Kim for completely forgetting about their agreement, and Kim immediately started apologizing to her, while the rest of the students still had no idea what they were talking about. At one point, all of Kim's classmates, along with Lee, were very scared of something, and Kim did not understand what exactly happened. Do-hyun entered the class, which somewhat frightened everyone except Kim, who had not yet realized that Do-hyun had come to them. After that, Kim turned back and saw Do-hyun and didn't understand what Do-hyun wanted to do this time since he himself came to their class. Then Kim decided to directly ask Do-hyun what he wanted to do this time. After that, Lee reminded Do-hyun that if he appeared in front of them again, she would punish him again. However, Do-hyun immediately calmed everyone down and said that he didn't come here to fight. After that, Do-hyun knelt down, which greatly surprised Kim and his classmates. Do-hyun said that he sincerely asks Kim for forgiveness for humiliating him in front of everyone, and touching him where it hurts the most by reminding him of Hyun-sung's death. After Do-hyun's apology, Kim asked Do-hyun how he knew about his past and Hyun-sung. However, Do-hyun reminded Kim that he would tell him about Hyun-sung if he defeated him. Kim immediately remembered their agreement, and resigned himself to the fact that he would not be able to find out from Do-hyun who told him about Hyun-sung. After that, Do-hyun got up from his knees and told Kim that because Kim held himself well in the fight, he would give him a little hint. After that, Do-hyun told Kim that the person who told him about Kim's secret was studying at the same school with him. After school, Kim and Lee went to a cafe, where Lee ordered ice cream with mango chunks, which she had been dreaming about all this hot day. Before eating her dessert, Lee decided to take a photo of it first. However, before Lee had time to take a photo of her ice cream, Kim was already preparing to eat it. Lee was very angry with Kim for being so late in getting ready to eat ice cream, which made Kim feel ashamed. At one point, Lee asked Kim if he was okay when he couldn't find out from Do-hyun who told him about Hyun-sung. Lee then felt that at that moment she should have forced Do-hyun to tell everything. However, Kim said that everything was fine with him, since over time he himself would find out who told Do-hyun about Hyun-sung, because if he found out everything right away, then it would still be just as unpleasant for him. Lee told Kim that if she could help him in any way, he could always turn to her. After that, Lee suggested that Kim follow each other on Instagram, but Kim told Lee that he didn't even know what that was. Kim told Lee that he was too busy fighting, so he didn't think about joining any social media, which only made Lee laugh more. Then Lee asked Kim for his phone number so she could register him on Instagram right now. Afterwards, Lee took Kim's profile photo, and Kim's photo was a little awkward for Kim. Lee was touched by how cute and handsome Kim turned out in the photo. When Kim returned home, his older sister had already prepared dinner for him. Instead of eating his dinner right away, Kim immediately took out his phone and started taking pictures of all the food, and his older sister was surprised that Kim finally got himself an Instagram page. When the older sister wanted to see Kim's profile, she saw a ridiculous photo of him on his profile, to which Kim told her that it was a girl who took the photo. As soon as Kim's older sister heard about the girl, she wanted to know from Kim if they were dating, to which Kim said that he was not dating this girl. Kim asked his sister if his profile photo was that ridiculous, since the girl told him he looked really cute in the photo. Then Kim's older sister was afraid that something was wrong with her brother, and she decided to take his temperature, thinking that Kim was sick. The next day at Junseo's school, the students are preparing for a sports competition, and the first thing the students must do is choose the sports uniform they will wear for the competition. The boys offered to participate in a football uniform, but the girls were against this proposal. Then the girls invited everyone to hold sports competitions, dressed in military uniforms. The boys were categorically against wearing military uniforms at competitions, since after school all boys would have to go to the army after school, and there they would have to dress in military uniforms. While everyone was arguing with each other about what uniform was best to wear at the competition, Kim just sat and thought that in fact it doesn't matter at all what everyone wears. At that moment, Lee approached Kim and suggested dressing in a police uniform, and Kim completely agreed with her opinion. After this, Chan approached Kim and said that all the students had already made a choice, and Kim demanded that everyone reconsider their choice in favor of the police uniform. Once all the students had decided on their sports uniform, all the students began to choose who would take part in which sport. A few days later, a sports competition was held at school, and all the students from each class gathered to prove to everyone their athletic superiority over the rest of the classes. Before the start of the competition, Kim and Chan decided to apply sunscreen to avoid getting burned under the scorching sun. At that moment, Lee and Suhee appeared and also prepared for the start of the competition, and before the competition, Lee decided to tie her hair in 2 ponytails, which everyone thought was very cute. At that moment, Lee suggested that everyone take a group photo and then post the photo on Instagram. In Lee's photo, everyone looked satisfied and happy, and only Kim looked a little awkward. After Lee took a group photo, Kim felt someone handcuff him. Later, Kim saw Seho, who was wearing a police uniform, and it was she who handcuffed him. Lee saw Seho and told her that the police uniform suits her very well, to which Seho told Lee that her ponytails suit her very well. After that, Kim asked Seho to remove his headphones, but after several attempts, Seho said that the lock on the handcuffs was jammed and therefore she would not be able to remove the handcuffs so easily. A couple of minutes later, everyone saw Kim and Seho stuck together in toy handcuffs. Many people looked at how Kim and Seho were stuck in handcuffs, and many guys were somewhat jealous that Kim was in such a situation. However, at this moment, Lee decided to help Kim Seho, and she decided to break those handcuffs. After Lee's blow, the handcuffs broke and Kim and Seho were free, which actually upset Seho somewhat. Before announcing the start of the sports competition, the director came to the podium to give an instructive speech, and many students did not like this so much that many of them shouted to the director to quickly fail and start the competition. After this, one of the teachers came to the podium and wanted to list a series of boring prizes that the students would receive, including a side dish of chicken, tickets to a museum, and other minor prizes. Kim thought that he had never lost in a sports competition before, and he was confident that he would easily get his first place. At that moment, 5th grade student Im Jae-hyun suddenly appeared, handing out bottles of water to everyone on his team. Jae-hyun told Kim that his class and Kim's class were teamed up this year, and he said that they had to give it their all to beat everyone and get their first place. After that, Kim turned to Lee and saw deep surprise on her face. Kim walked over to Lee and Suhee and handed them one bottle of cold water each. Suhee told Kim and Lee that she was jealous of their class because with students like them, their class would be easily defeated. However, Suhee told them that her class was also prepared and that they would not give in. At that moment, Sabine suddenly appeared in front of Kim and Lee with her friends in police costumes, who were also participating in sports competitions. While Sabine was talking about how they had no equal in the competition, Lee mimed with her fingers how she tickled Sabine. Sabine could not stand such pressure from Lee and began to laugh hysterically, remembering the incident when Lee managed to tickle her half to death. After a couple of seconds of hysterical laughter, Sabine could not stand it and fell to the ground, and then Sabine's friends tried to bring her to her senses. Lee immediately started laughing at Sabine and saying that they had no equal in competitions. The first competition was a tug-of-war, with two opposing teams struggling to get the middle of the rope to their side. At one point, Lee put in more effort to make sure she led her team to victory. Thanks to Lee's efforts, her team was able to easily win and earn their first points for the victory. Sabine was upset that they lost to the other team in the first round, and she and her friends began to resent the fact that the opposite team defeated them so easily. The next competition in school competitions was cockfighting, and already many students began to give up in the first seconds. June was one of the few members who was able to easily last this long. After some time, June demanded that Lee step out of the crowd and have a round with her. Lee didn't understand why June wanted to compete against her in this competition since they were both on the same team. However, this did not stop June, and she invited Lee to conduct a mortal fight between them. At that moment, one of the hosts told June that if she didn't put on her team uniform right now, she would receive her first penalty point. June said that the other members weren't in very good shape and she didn't need the team uniform as she had full confidence in her abilities. At that moment, Kabin appeared and ordered June to put on her team uniform right away. In the end, June had to wear a bear costume, which made her look really cute. The next competition was dodgeball, and Sabine said that Lee would not be able to beat her, as Sabine said that she was very good at dodgeball and that she simply had no equal. Sabine made the first throw, and Lee was easily able to catch the ball and prevent the team from losing. Lee made the next throw, and not only was she able to hit Sabine with the ball, but she also hit Sabine's friends in one throw. At this moment, Kim could be heard from the crowd supporting Lee, calling her a great master. While the other players were throwing the ball at each other, Lee simultaneously dodged the ball and yelled at Kim for calling her master again in front of the others. Meanwhile, Kim and Jong were surprised at how skillfully Lee could dodge the ball. At this moment, Seho looked at Kim and hoped that Kim would root for her as much as he did for Lee. After the dodgeball competition, Seho praised Lee for her excellent dodgeball game, and she suggested that they all go out together after the competition. Suddenly the guys started shooting water from bottles at each other out of boredom, which the girls didn't like a bit. Lee did not understand how the guys shot water at each other, because they had ordinary bottles, to which the guys answered her that it was enough to just make a small hole in the bottle cap and press on the bottle. Kim and Chan looked at these guys from the outside and did not understand how anyone could behave so irresponsibly. However, after a couple of seconds, Kim and Chan took out their bottles and began shooting water at each other. The more people started shooting water at each other, the more fun everyone became. At one point, while the guys were shooting water at each other, one of the guys accidentally hit Lee with water. However, instead of getting angry or hitting whoever hit Lee with the water, Lee also took her bottle and started shooting with it too. Suki looked at all this from the outside and thought that all those who shot water from bottles simply took it and forgot about the competition. After that, Suhi looked at Siho and thought that at least she was acting like an adult and reasonable person. However, after a few seconds, Siho could not restrain herself, prepared her bottle and also started shooting water. Siho then ran up to Kim with Lee, and they both began spraying cool water at Kim. After a few seconds, everyone started shooting at Suhi and trying to persuade her to join them. At that moment, Jun passed by Suhi, and she began to wink at her, hinting at her to help her. Jun saw Kim and Lee shooting at Suhi and thought it looked really funny. In the end, Jun didn't help Suhi and just watched as Kim and Lee continued to shoot water at Suhi. After a couple of minutes, Kim and Lee ran out of bottled water and stopped shooting water at each other. Meanwhile, Jun looked at the wet Suhi and did not stop laughing at what had just happened to her. A few minutes later, a basketball match began between two different teams. In this game, Jong's team won, and all the players on his team called him 185 because of his height. The girls were surprised by Chan's height, since they had not noticed that Chan was so tall before. At this point, they began to think that Chan was a very cute guy, and many girls wanted to get his phone number. Kim overheard the girls talking about Chan, and he was surprised that the girls began to like Chan so quickly. However, as soon as the girls saw Kim looking at them, they immediately decided to leave as soon as possible. While the girls were leaving, they looked at Kim and did not understand how Chan could be friends with such a bully like Kim. Kim believed that it was his own fault that during his entire time at school he had created for himself the image of a hooligan, with whom it was very difficult to find a common language and make friends. At that moment, Chan called Kim over to rejoice together for his victory in basketball. Kim approached Young and told him that he was being talked about a lot by several girls who were watching him play, and that they immediately left when they saw Kim. However, Kim was very surprised when Chan told him that he already has one girl whom he likes very much. Kim decided to ask Chan why he didn't tell him about this girl earlier, to which Chan replied that Kim had recently ruined his entire relationship with this girl. Before going to rest after basketball, Jong wished Kim good luck in his next football game. Kim looked at Jungwoo's back and thought that of all the guys in the class, he was the only one who felt like he was wasting his youth. Kim also felt that if he were here from the past, he would simply continue to waste his youth. After that, Kim looked at the crowd, saw Lee among the students, and thought that if it weren't for her, he would still continue to lead his previous lifestyle. Kim immediately felt better when he remembered how Lee advised him to live his life with dignity, so that it would contain as many happy and pleasant memories as possible. A few seconds later, a fierce game of football began, with each team doing everything possible to win. During the game, Kim ran past his opponents with the ball without any problems and with an irresistible desire to score a goal. The players from the other team decided that with such a character, Kim would try to score the ball into the goal without anyone's help, and they decided to take advantage of this feature of Kim. Then the players from the opposite team decided to surround Kim so that he could not score the ball into the goal on his own, and thus they could intercept the ball from him. However, unexpectedly for all the players from the other team, Kim passed the ball to one of the players on his team. The players from the other team were very surprised that, despite his character and style of play, Kim still passed the ball. Meanwhile, Kim looked at the surprised faces of his opponents, and was pleased that he managed to deceive the entire opposing team. While the opponents were distracted by Kim, one of the players to whom Kim passed the ball to Jong. At that moment, Chan focused on the enemy goal and scored the first goal, thereby earning the first point for his team. After the goal, Chan told Kim that he did not expect him at all that Kim would still decide to pass the ball to someone on the team. In response, Kim asked Chan not to be sarcastic in front of him anymore, but Chan no longer listened to Kim and went to prepare for the next football game. However, Kim was not too bothered by the fact that Jong did not hear him, since he was already determined to continue leading his team to victory. A few minutes later the next game of football began, and just like in the last game, Kim again gave it his all. With each goal scored, Kim and his team were getting closer to winning this competition. While Lee was cheering for Kim and his team, some were discussing how Kim might even be a little better at the sport than Jong. At one point, Lee started shouting even louder about how well Kim was playing and telling everyone that she was friends with Kim. At this moment, Siho was watching the game with all her pleasure and thinking about how well Kim was playing. At one point, All the spectators and players noticed that something strange happened to Kim during the game. When the players tried to find out from Kim what happened to him, he said that due to an unsuccessful delivery of the ball, he injured his leg. However, almost immediately Kim calmed down and said that he wanted to avoid the serve, which caused him to trip over the ball himself. The players asked Kim if he could continue playing, to which Kim said that he could continue playing, but everyone saw how badly Kim was limping, and everyone thought that it would be better for Kim to quit the game. However, Kim claimed that he was capable of continuing to play, and at that moment Kim's leg gave out and he began to fall. As soon as Kim began to fall, Lee immediately ran up to him, who managed to catch Kim and prevent his fall. Lee noticed that Kim was now unable to walk on his own, and she told Kim to sit on her back right now. Afterwards, Lee put Kim on her back and told one of the coaches that Kim was no longer competing and that she would take him to the aid station. Kim was ashamed that Lee dragged the school leader on her back, and he asked Lee to let him go, but Lee immediately refused him. Then Kim quietly asked Lee if she was not ashamed of the fact that she picked up the guy in front of everyone and put him on her back. Kim told Lee that after this incident, everyone will understand that Lee is friends with a bully like him. However, Lee said that she is not at all worried about what other people might think, since she is just helping her friend. Lee also immediately said that even though she was just helping her friend, she was very ashamed that she had to pick up the guy, and so she told Kim that for this he should treat her again. After that, Lee said that she was just joking about Kim having to treat her, but she was still ashamed of carrying a guy on her back. When Kim and Lee reached the first aid station, the nurse said that Kim had a very serious injury and would have to go to the hospital. When Kim went to the hospital, his leg was put in a cast, and Kim will have to walk with crutches for some time. When Kim's friends saw him with a broken leg and crutches, everyone immediately began to laugh, since when he fought, he did not receive a single serious injury. The next day, Kim's class celebrated their victory in the school competition, as the class took a well-deserved first place. The whole class was very happy about their victory, since each student was entitled to a portion of spicy chicken legs. The whole class was grateful to Kim for the fact that he had contributed the most effort to this victory, and some students handed him one chicken leg as a sign of gratitude. That's how this school competition ended, and everyone had a lot of fun with it. Also, until Kim's leg recovered, some of his classmates left a lot of different nice inscriptions and drawings on his cast. Meanwhile, Sabine's 4th grade class was dissatisfied with the fact that they took 3rd place, as they were given eggplant hot dogs as a prize. Sabine then started blaming Siho for not putting in her best effort on purpose, but Siho quickly reminded Sabine that she was the reason they quickly lost in dodgeball. Siho said that they had to eat all the hot dogs that were handed to them anyway, and she suggested that they all play rock paper scissors together, and the first one to lose would have to eat all the hot dogs. Sabine and her friends said that they wouldn't play, and then Siho said that they were just scared, and she decided to ask someone else to play, and in the end, Sabine and her friends decided to play. As soon as the girls started playing, Sabine immediately lost in the first round. Sabine was very upset that she would have to eat all the eggplant hot dogs. A month after the competition, so he asked Jun if she could see everything well. Jun, with her bangs reaching her eyes, said that she could partially see something through her hair. So he told Jun that it was time for her to tidy up her hair. But Jun did not pay attention to her hair and said that it was time for her to go to another training session. Because of her hair, Jun couldn't see the wall in front of her, causing her to hit herself hard, and Jun still decided to cut her hair a little. Before Sohee started cutting Jean's hair, she said that she didn't care at all about how her hair would look from the outside, and all that was important to her was that her hair didn't interfere with her vision. After a couple of minutes, Sohee finished cutting Jun's hair, who really liked the way Sohee cut her hair. When Sohee and Jun were in the locker room, Sohee asked Jun how often she goes to the hairdresser, and Jun said that she rarely goes to get her hair cut because she's just too lazy to take care of her hair. Coming out of the locker room, Jun told Sohee that she did a very good job cutting her hair, and she offered Sohee to cut Kabin's hair, to which Sohee said that she had never cut a guy's hair before. After that, Kabin entered the gym. Only his nose was visible behind his hair. Sohee and Jun looked at Kabin, and Sohee thought that he really needed a haircut. Jun approached Kabin and told him that he urgently needed his hair cut, and she suggested Kabin Sohee as a hairdresser, and Kabin agreed to have his hair cut a little. Jean's idea to cut Kabin's hair, since in the summer a short haircut would suit Kabin best. Kabin sat down on a chair and told Sohee about his haircut, the same thing that Jun told her before she cut hers, that he didn't care what he looked like as long as he got his haircut quickly. Meanwhile, Kim noticed that Chan was getting ready to go to judo training again, and Chan was very surprised that Kim no longer asked him if new members had appeared in his circle. Chan also noticed that Kim no longer had a cast, to which Kim told Chan that he himself did not notice how quickly the time passed during which his leg was healed. After that, Chan noticed that Kim's hair had grown slightly, and at that moment Kim also noticed that Chan's hair had also become slightly longer than usual. Chan said that he purposely grew his hair so long because he thought it made him look much more attractive. At one point, Lee interrupted Chan and said that she didn't like guys with long hair at all. Seho also said that she didn't like long hair on guys, as she felt that long hair made her feel weird and made guys look a little messy. At the time, Lee said she liked it when guys kept their hair neat and trim, recalling images of the same guys she watches on TV. Kim tried to tease Chan a little and tell him that Lee was right about something, but Chan did not take Kim's words seriously. Lee said that Kim also looked a little awkward, to which Kim told Lee that he would like to go to the hairdresser this week and get his hair done. Then Lee decided to ask Kim what kind of hairstyle he would like to give himself. Kim thought for a moment and said that he would like to make his hair a little neater. At this moment, Kim thought that now he acted as if he wanted to fit into the type of guys that Lee liked. Kim noticed that Chan understood what he was thinking about, and he decides to get out of this situation as soon as possible. Then Kim immediately said that he planned to simply tint the ends of his hair blonde. However, Lee said that a neat hairstyle like the guys on TV would suit Kim very well. Then Lee began to imagine that if Kim did her hair neatly, she would think that a guy from the boy group would study with her in class, which only scared Kim more. Meanwhile, Sookie got ready to cut Kabin's hair, and Kabin himself couldn't wait to finally get his hair cut. Sookie began to carefully and quickly cut Kabin's hair so that he would definitely like his new image. When Sookie was almost finished cutting Kabin's hair, Jun and the rest of the sports club members couldn't believe what they saw. As soon as Sookie cut Kabin's hair, Kabin saw the faces of the sports club members and thought that Sookie only made it worse, and now he looks very ugly. However, Sookie told Kabin that he now looked even more handsome than before, after which she gave Kabin a mirror so that he could see his new look. Kabin picked up the mirror, looked into it, and saw in the reflection a pretty face that he had not seen for a long time. No matter how long Kabin looked in the mirror, he still could not believe that this handsome man was him. All the members of the sports club were shocked that Kabin suddenly turned out to be handsome, and many began to call him a traitor for hiding his true face for so long. After Sohee got his hair cut by Kabin, he immediately began his routine of training and strength training. The rest of the members of the sports club could not start training, and they just stood and watched as Kabin trained. During training, Kabin wanted to drink water, but he was greatly distracted by the looks of the girls outside. Kabin asked Jun to drive away her fans because they were making him unable to train properly, to which Jun said that they weren't her fans. After training, Jun went to the dining room with her friends, and now Kabin began to irritate her very much. Lee, Seho and Sohee did not understand what happened to Jun, and they decided to find out from her what happened to her. Jun told the girls that after Sohee cut Kabin's hair, Kabin began to attract too many of her fans, and she was worried that very soon all her fans would leave Kabin. Lee didn't understand why Jun was telling them about her fans, to which Jun said that she couldn't show her true emotions in front of them, and she needed her emotions for someone else, which she wasn't so ashamed of. Jun then told Sohee that she must now surpass Kabin through training, and that from now on Kabin is officially her main rival. Lee then remembered that it had been a long time since Sohee started working out, so she decided to find out how her training was going, and Sohee said that she felt like she had lost some weight. Then Jun intervened in the conversation and said that Sohee tries her best in training and does not feel sorry for herself. However, Jun said that she didn't see any change in Sohee after all this training, which made Sohee very upset. Jun also said that she carefully monitors Sohee's training, and she said that Sohee's weight and physique have not changed at all during her training, which surprised Jun. Sohee was very upset that her training did not yield any results, and then Lee and Seho began to support her and tell her that she was not fat at all. Lee also reminded Sohee that she gave Kabin a very good haircut, and Lee wondered if Kabin looked much better after the haircut. Sookie said that after she cut Kabin's hair, he suddenly became more popular with girls. While Sohee was talking, she suddenly became silent and remembered the moment when she first saw Kabin's face. Lee noticed that Suhi was lost in thought, so she decided to shout at Suhi as loudly as possible to distract her from her thoughts. Suki thought that it was enough for her to look at Kabin just once, and an inexplicable tickling appeared in her chest. Previously, Suhi saw Kabin as an ordinary guy who helps her in training. However, it was only after Suki cut Kabin's hair that she noticed that he had a very pleasant voice. Suki also felt that Kabin could be a kind person, and she didn't understand why she only thought good things about Kabin. Meanwhile, Siho told the girls that from now on, every time her hair grows, she would get her hair cut by Suha. Lee also wanted Suhi to also cut his younger brother's hair, who had a very thick beard, and June was surprised that Lee's little brother had a thick beard. At this point, Suki told the girls that Kabin seemed cute to her even before she cut his hair, as she really liked the way Kabin's beard blew in the wind. The girls were surprised that Suhi spoke so much and so positively about Kabin, and they decided that Suhi had fallen in love with Kabin. However, Suki herself immediately began to deny and tell the girls that all this was not true, and that she was not at all in love with Kabin. While Suhi's friends tried to bring her to her senses, two girls standing nearby looked at Suhi with contempt. One day, Suki was already late for her next lesson at the sports club, because one of the teachers asked her to help, and Suki could not refuse the teacher, and she had to help the teacher. While Suki was in a hurry to the sports club, she again remembered Kabin's trimmed face, which is why the heart in her chest beat more and more every time. While Suki was running along the corridor, she heard women's voices in one of the offices saying very unpleasant things about Suki. Suki stopped to listen in on the conversation, and she heard two girls talking about how sick they were of looking at Suki.